Call the meeting to order. I do apologize for the late start, but we do now have a quorum. We have 4 members in the room, and one by Tavis Hall is on the phone, my conference call. And again, I apologize for the late start, and thank you all for bearing with us. We're here today to discuss the zoning ordinance amendments regarding hobby farms that was sent back to us by the City Council. And Eric, would you like to kind of give us some history on what's going on and why we're here?
Sure. Eric Schrader, City Planner. So, as the Commission is aware of, staff has been working on an amendment to the zoning ordinance to address hobby farms and farm animals for quite some time. Once we had a draft of that ready to go before the Commission reviewed it at a regular meeting and then at a special meeting and then again at a regular meeting where a recommendation of approval was provided to the City Council based on the version that's included in the packet. It was set to go before the City Council for initial action to set a date of hearing, and there was discussion regarding a desire by some for the item to be sent back to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So the City Council did vote to remand the item back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for additional review and recommendation. So Councilman Morrissey did submit a document which was also included in the packet that kind of outlined his suggested additional changes, but other than that, I don't think I necessarily need to go through. I think we can open it up however you want to proceed. If you want to have some commission discussion first, or open it to the public first, however you want to handle it.
Well, I know Marcia had in the past expressed that she had some ideas she wanted to share with us, so if it's appropriate, Marcia, do you want to do that now?
Sure, I can do that. We had been discussing this for a long time, and one of the biggest issues started when I was on the council commission was because of the chicken issue. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about 4 chickens for 20,000 foot and another chicken for another 10,000 feet or something, 5,000. And that just seemed kind of out of line to me as far as thinking about the number of homes that are residential homes in our area that really would even have that kind of square footage to work with, and it seemed kind of excessive to me. So I know that some people are not in favor of any hobby farms in town, but if it's fairly small and we're just talking a few chickens or something, I think that we could possibly change the wording so that a lesser amount of space would be needed for something like that, and that I don't think that would create a proliferation of hobby farms, but I think those people that want to do something self-sustaining, on a very small scale, could still do that. So the recommendations some of the recommendations that were submitted to us, I do agree with, but the main one that I'm concerned with is the fencing area, the minimum fencing area or confined area of 20,000 square foot, change that to 5,000. And when we do that, then looking at what most homes have for square footage outside of the house and the garage and outlying areas. And then if they want to do 5, what was it? If they want to have an extra animal, up to 8 for each additional 1,250 square foot or something similar to that. I agree with that. What I don't agree with, because I've talked to people that own or that live near people that have peacocks, So it's kind of two different subjects we're talking about here. But peacocks are beautiful animals. They're gorgeous, but they tend to roam, and unless they're enclosed in a cage that they can't fly out of, they fly up on roofs. They get into neighboring properties, and I've got pictures of that. And a woman that contacted me about this a couple of months ago. So in town, maybe out of town, maybe in a suburb or outlying area, maybe more agricultural, as long as they're confined and kept to a few animals, a few peacocks, possibly. But in town, I don't think we should allow peacocks. So that part of what Mr. Morrissey suggested, I don't agree with. But changing the size of our ordinance to make it a little easier for people to just have a few chicken or whatever. The other part that we talked about is the large and intermediate, and we had a gentleman here at the meeting that I actually missed, but I've been to his place, Rick Westfall, and he's concerned about sheep out in his area.
Is he the guy
So
that
that's
lives
something
out
different.
by Allen Hospital?
It's off Wagner Road, kind of. I don't know if I have his address. Well, here it is.
Well, you don't need
It's
to
on-
repeat his address, but I just...
No, I'm not.
Avon, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, that's the guy I'm thinking of,
Yeah, right. And so I know he's concerned about the number of, he's got sheep next door, right next, abutting his property. He can't open his back windows for fear of smelling, that's not fear, it's real, of the smell. And you're not even supposed to have something right next to the property line, which to me, from looking at everything, that's what it looked like, that it was right there. So I'm hoping we can have some kind of regulations to help prevent that from happening. And if he is not in compliance, that can be rectified for the neighbors and for him. He's been dealing with that for probably a couple of years.
Yeah, he was here.
Yeah,
at a
right,
meeting, yeah.
right. He was at the meeting that I was not able to be at. So that's kind of how I feel. But and then there's one other area too, and that's we talked about having abutting owners approve, you know, and then also 60%. And I think Jamie even said something about that 60% of surrounding, that seemed like an awful lot of people to have an okay in order to have a few chickens or something small. So I kind of like the suggestion of just, if it's abutting property owners, all the abutting property owners that need to approve of somebody having an urban hobby farm, and then immediately across the street. That should probably rectify any concerns. And then we would still have the right, if somebody still complained, I think we would still have, I think we would still be able to deal with it.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, but wasn't it a case of either they had to have a petition, or not a petition, but a letter signed by the surrounding property owners, or a special permit from the Board of Review if not everybody agreed?
Correct. As currently proposed, a hobby farm requires a special permit unless a petition of certain signatures is provided. And what the signatures has to be, as currently proposed, is 100% of the abutting, and yeah, is it 60? Turn to it here. Refresh my memory. And 60% of the property owners within 250 feet.
And that part
So-
was fine with me. What I thought it was initially when we had the first discussion was everyone had to approve or you didn't get it. Once we added in the everyone approves and you don't have to go through a special permit or a special permit, that part was,
Okay, I couldn't
So,
remember exactly
yep.
what you said,
Yeah.
Jamie. Okay.
This is Paul, if I could just jump in here.
Sure.
I am a little concerned. I mean, 250 feet doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a block. And it's a block in any direction. And for that number, you know, for it to be 100% adjoining, which makes sense, but then 60%, if there's two neighbors, 4 houses down, who don't necessarily like the idea, you're talking about 500 radial feet, then potentially you're talking about somebody across the street that isn't really within any sort of earshot. So I don't know if there's a way to tweak that, but it seems a little excessive, considering it's one of the things that they've got to have checked off to get the.
Well, but isn't that kind of in line with other requests for variances, the 250 feet?
This is Schrader. So the 250 foot is in line with what is considered a standard notice radius for special permit requests and some other requests like rezone requests. We don't currently have any similar situation where there's, if you have a certain amount of petition support, that it doesn't need an approval process. I'm not aware of any. There was some discussion of something similar for the front yard RV parking, but that got essentially tabled indefinitely, and I have no idea, what way that's going to go once it gets brought back up. But other than that, really. So the only thing it really lines up with is the notice, which is why the number was picked, because it does line up with what we would normally send for notice.
This is Castle. So on that, if we just did the adjoining neighbors and somebody didn't approve, then that same 250 feet around it would get the notice for the special permit. So the same number of people would be involved either way, correct?
Correct. So the situation where they're not going to be involved is if they can get 100% petition of the adjoining property owners, and if there are some non-adjoining property owners that would be within that 250 foot, if we would strike that, they essentially, have no voice if it's written, at just adjoining property owners, and they get that 100% of that, then the hobby farm permit would get issued and no special permit would be needed.
This is Duna. My standing was at the previous meetings we talked about having, some sort of record or licensure or registration of where the hobby farms are. And I thought at the June meeting, we resolved it in that we would not have an official registration or licensure, that we would just, through filing records of requests, through that information, that we would keep that on a file somewhere.
Right, because they're either going to be applying for the special permit, which will go through Planning Commission, Board of Adjustment approval process, or they're going to be submitting a petition, and then we're going to kind of issue them some sort of permit that basically authorizes it because it doesn't need the special permit. But either way, we would be able to track, keep a file of those.
And in June, when we were discussing why I wanted licensure or registration, I was saying that because of animal flu outbreaks and all that, we wanted to know where the outbreak was ground zero. So in June, when we had that meeting, you satisfied my concern through basically Tavis Hall's proposal with that. So otherwise, at the June meeting, I supported the original proposal as presented in our packet. Putting aside the licensure and the registration, but I would also support the Morrissey amendments that were offered. So I have no concerns if we do the Morrissey amendment that was offered. I would vote for that.
This is Holdeman. Do we know what other cities are doing?
We have done some research on that, and quite frankly, it's kind of all over the board.
Okay.
There really is
I suspected you were gonna say that.
wide spectrum of everything from communities that are being, very lightly restrictive, to the extent of encouraging hobby farms, particularly chickens. There are certainly multiple examples of communities that essentially allow a certain number of chickens on pretty much any property within their community, to the other extreme of communities that essentially don't allow any sort of hobby farm, period, to everything in between of how they try and allow it but restrict it. So
Did we look at this is Dunot again? Did we look at Cedar Rapids ordinance? Because I know that former Commissioner Gustafson proposed that we look at the Cedar Rapids ordinance, and what came from that?
they're pretty lenient on chickens. I don't have it right in front of me, but I think I don't remember for other animals, but I know for chickens, they allow a certain number pretty much no matter what your lot size is. And I don't remember the number, something like 6, but.
Because I also agree, I mean, ideally, I guess, I also understand and agree with Commissioner Hall's statement on why hobby farms are a good thing with sustainability and learning about animals and animal husbandry, or whatever Tavis was talking about at previous meetings. So I agree with that stance as well.
Okay. This is Tyson, and maybe we said this in our earlier meetings, but do we have records right now of individual? How many folks do we have in Blackhawk with hobby farms? Do we know, or?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
No, we do not.
Okay.
I mean, so we would only cover the incorporated area of the city of Waterloo, and going back to pre-2011, there was really not a lot of provisions allowing for farm animals other than in the areas zoned ag. In residential areas, the chickens were outright prohibited, and basically other farm animals would have had to have been on what was considered an actual farm as opposed to like a residential lot or acreage. So 2011 is when that was amended to allow hobby farms via the special permit process. Prior to that, obviously we've received indication that there are instances of full-blown hobby farms to everything from full-blown hobby farms to just a property that has a few chickens or a few rabbits or whatever the case may be, that technically based on how the ordinance was written in 2011, they were all had 1 year's time frame to obtain special permit process for any existing operations, and we had a very, very small handful of special permit requests between 2011 till the more recent times when we kind of tabled a couple indefinitely, one of which was the one next to the Westfalts, while we worked on an amendment to the ordinance.
Okay. So we did get a few complaints then. Is that what you're saying, or what?
We've had some complaints, yes.
Okay. And then another thing too, I just want to get back to the 5,000 square foot, or the 50 foot. And I went out the other night and just kind of measured it off with some tapes and stuff. And 50 foot, and that's the minimum, right? That you get space you have to have.
That's why.
Wide, 50 foot. And 50 foot is not very wide, but
No.
I don't have any chickens or anything. But
I don't think there's currently a
But
50
it's-
foot minimum.
I think that was when he was explaining what the 5,000 foot was. Is that what you're?
Yeah, I think
That's-
that might be
that's-
covered under Councilman Morrissey's proposal.
okay, yeah.
And again, it's not saying it needs to be 50 foot, it's just suggesting that it go from 20,000
Okay.
square foot to 5,000 square foot, and then noting that 5,000 square foot is equivalent to 50 by 100.
Okay, all right.
And this is Butchin, and I'm just wondering what width most city lots are. Do you have any idea?
I would say that 50 is probably a reasonable average. Some of the older ones will be less than that. You'll see a lot of 40s, some that even go a little less than 40 foot, but there certainly are lots of 60s. And then of course in more recent subdivisions, you'll see, a wide range of everything between 60 to 100 or more.
Right. Well, in that Westville situation, I'm pretty sure his letter said 1.2 acres was pretty much everybody's lot in that
That
particular
little
area.
area. Yeah, it's more of an acreage
Right.
area than a
Right,
more
but it's still
typical.
residential. It's
Yep.
urban residential.
And there's a requirement in there too, and I apologize, I don't have it in front of me. There's a requirement in there though that says that it's gotta be X amount of feet from the property line, correct?
In
10 feet.
in what was recommended included a 10-foot, I believe, just for large and intermediate though. I don't think. Let me review that and verify. But I think in what was proposed, there wasn't a setback listed for small. Our thought process was on the small animals, chickens, rabbits, or whatnot. They're primarily going to be, contained within a pen, even if they may, be let out into a backyard area at some point in time. But when you're starting to get into that smaller animal and smaller lot size required, it's just not going to make any sense to require a 10-foot offset for that fence. You take that, even at the 20,000 square foot proposed minimum area devoted to the animals, you take a typical lot that would have a backyard that's, just big enough to meet that 20,000 square foot. As soon as you take off 10 foot off of the one side, 10 foot off the other side, and 10 foot off the back side, now, there's going to be then even fewer lots that would meet that 20,000 square foot.
Right.
And we thought it is a little, would be considered excessive to require a 10-foot, fence offset area for those type of small animals, chickens, rabbits, etc.
So this is Butchin again. So in that, Terry, go ahead, Tavis.
I was just saying thanks.
Oh, well, going back to that Westville situation then, if the building those animals are confined in, whether it's 6 or 16 or however many are out there, if that's right on the property line, what can we do about that?
Well, we can't do anything currently because we don't have
No,
an
but I mean,
ordinance
if this,
on-
I'm just saying, if this is,
Right, yeah.
if this is
If this
passed.
ordinance is passed as proposed, the site next to the Westfalls does not comply with either the density requirements as proposed or the setbacks. And they would have to do some
Move the building
revisions to
and
get it to comply
possibly-
or ask for a variance to the requirements.
Okay,
So this is where we're stuck at right now, is that, I want to have expediency here and getting this done, but,
Yeah.
so we're stuck, is that what we're talking about right now, that they don't comply, and we want to make sure they comply, but we don't want to be inconvenience them from,
No, I don't think we're necessarily stuck on that one. I think the discussion has been on what should the regulations be for the overall city.
Right.
And, the commission meetings we've had, there's been a lot of discussion on that with some viewpoints on both sides. And we ended up with a recommendation out of the commission, but now it's, been remanded and there's been further discussion. And again, there's kind of that discussion on both sides. So it's basically kind of trying to find that ground that everyone thinks is a reasonable compromise for an acceptable level of requirements for hobby farms.
And that, this is do not, and that's what I was saying about the Morrissey amendment. What Councilman Morrissey offered, I think seems pretty reasonable, so that's.
Yeah, actually, I was just thinking here, we have several people in the audience that I'm assuming some would like to say something about it. And I don't know if Councilman Morrissey wants to start it off. If you do, or if you want to let somebody else go first, that's fine too.
If somebody else wants to go first, it's fine, otherwise I will.
Hey, I ask just one more question. I apologize for being late, and you might have talked about this already, but I am curious about the first section about the peacocks, and I know that that was discussed earlier on, and the reason that I brought it up as one that we may not want is because they are very loud animals, just like roosters. So my concern is if we're not allowing roosters, then why are we allowing peacocks in this amendment? So I just had that question, if it was brought up at all yet.
Yeah, that was one of Councilman Morrissey's recommendations,
Okay.
and so he can address that.
Okay.
Yeah, my name's Pat Morrissey, and I live at 824 West 3rd Street in Waterloo, and I'm also a city councilman for Ward 3. And just a real brief history, this got brought to my attention by a couple people in Ward 3, and their names, one of the names has been mentioned here, and at that point in time I had contact with Eric and Noel regarding what was going on with this, and this was like going on 2 years ago now, and Eric knows that, and they're sort of stuck, and the Planning and Zoning Commission had a case that was sort of in limbo, or was in limbo, and so did Board of Adjustment. They had a case that was in limbo, and they needed some guidance. And at that point in time, I talked to Eric, and I decided that I wanted to do some research because I wanted to push this along because of especially the comments and complaints I was hearing from one person in Ward 3. And that led me to get a drove of information from different cities about their urban animal or hobby farm ordinances they had. It was also a conversation piece that I had at League of Cities annual conference with various people from different cities and how they handled it. And as Eric said, it's basically all over the place, from absolutely none all the way to allowing almost anything. So I put together all this information, compilation of it, and then I passed all those suggestions on to Eric sometime here, probably 6 months ago, I'd say. And from that, Eric and Noel and whoever wrote it up. And unfortunately, I did not make it to the meetings, but when I saw that it was coming to council, I was sort of in disbelief because as I read it, I found that there were some things that I just found rather objectionable, given the fact that I think that people who own their own property have a right to do with that property something that is reasonable. And I saw the part about I don't have any problem, and I'm not the chicken man or like other people or any, kind of name you want to. I believe that the ordinance needs to be written in a way that makes it palatable and makes it reasonable and as well as fair. And the wording that I had seen in the different cities that I'd looked up, always when it was talking about smaller animals, said up to a certain square footage. And what was lacking in our ordinance was that word up to. Now, if the language in here said for small animals up to 20,000, that's a heck of a lot different than saying you're only allowed 4 small animals if you have 20,000 square feet that are fenced in. And as has been alluded to here, the average size of a lot here is maybe up to 1/3 of an acre. And 1/3 of an acre is about 15,000, well, short, 14,400, something like 14,400 square feet. But if you take out the house, you take out the driveway, you take out the garage, and you can't have it in the front yard. Your front yard is includes some side yards as well, I'd say. I mean, what do you got left out of an average size 1/3 of an acre? You don't have much, and you don't have probably 5,000, even 5,000 square feet to fence in. But you sure don't have 20,000 square feet, because 20,000 square feet is basically close to a half an acre, and that's just plain old property. That doesn't include any structures on it, driveways or anything like that. So this 5,000, the suggestion for 5,000, I think makes the bar easier for people to attain than that 20,000. And to me, I see it basically as a right of property owners to do that, and that includes property owners that they occupy that house on that property. I know that there might be renters and stuff, but I'm sure that they're going to have to get the approval of their landlord before they do anything like this, because although they're renting, that's a different kind of relationship than we're talking about here. So after reading over the ordinance, I put these together, and I just go through it real quickly. That the peacock thing, I love peacocks. You know, what can I say? And when I saw that they were excluded, I said, why exclude them? Why don't you just put them in large animals, in the large animal section? But to me, that's just on a wish list for me. It's not a kind of thing that I'm going to go out and protest out in front of City Hall over. So, but then we come to the minimum fenced area, and I really believe that minimum fenced area needs to be reduced down to 5,000, or you can even change it by saying 4 animals up to a certain amount, like other cities have done. But I think that does need to be changed. The other thing that I included in there was the part about the density over the 5,000, that for each additional one, 1,250 square feet, but you can't have any more than 8. And one of the things that is being not talked about here is all the regulations that go into having an urban animal hobby farm in the first place. What you have to do, you have to not just fence, but you have to make sure that they're fed. You have to make sure that they're housed properly. You can't have roosters, which I got a complaint today about roosters roaming around someplace. A couple of them, and I guess I got to take care of that by making a couple phone calls. But there are regulations about sanitation, about cleanliness, about feeding, about where the chickens go. It's not just about chickens; it's about other small animals, you know. And if you look at how it's listed in the small animals include, excuse me for a second. Include rabbits, mink, ferrets, chinchilla, chicken, goose, pigeon, pheasant, quail, duck, similar animals, but it excludes rooster, guinea, falcon, peacock, exotic animals as determined in the reasonable discretion of the city planner or designee. So, you know, these are very small creatures. And as, current events has it, and things have been going on recently, animal husbandry within a city is something that has caught on, and it is something that is, I think, appropriate for a city the size of Waterloo as well. And it gives those property owners the right to have a few of those, whether they want to have, if they're going to do chickens, if they want to have a few eggs, if they want to have a few rabbits. I know that one of the people that had contacted me was a miner. His father had contacted me, and he had raised some chickens as part of a project, but now he was being told that he had to get rid of those half dozen chickens because there was no allowance for him to have chickens on his property. Well, fortunately, that's been held in abeyance pending the decision that comes out of here. But I can tell you that he does not have 20,000 square feet on which he can confine 5 or 6 chickens. But this 5,000 square foot would allow him at least to come and get a variance. Through the procedures that are set in place. The other thing that is included in here that I wish you would eliminate is that 250-foot radius, and that's 250 foot radiating out from the boundaries of your property, which that's quite a distance when you think about it. I understand the 100% of the abutting properties, and I think adding properties across the street would be important to it. But, I mean, what kind of noises are chickens and chinchillas and mink going to make that's going to disturb the family, as Mr. Hall said, 4 houses down? None whatsoever. And you'd only be allowed up to 8 in this. The other thing so I wish that 250-foot radius would be eliminated in favor of the 100% of the abutting properties, or then you just have to get a variance. And keeping in mind that you have to get a special permit anyway. So the final thing that I have in here is something that wasn't included in it at all, and that's a butchering of any animal. And I think that should be included. And I know I talked to Eric about that, and Eric had stated that maybe it would be something that should be put in here, because I don't think any of us want to be in our backyard and watch somebody carry a chicken out and wring their neck in front of our grandkids or our kids, or even myself for that matter. So that's pretty much where I'm at with this. And if you have any questions of me, that's fine. Otherwise, I'll sit down for somebody else. Thank you. And I appreciate you hearing this again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, if there's anybody else in the audience that wants to make a comment on this, we do have another meeting starting at 4 o'clock, so you're welcome to come forward and give us your comments, but please keep them brief. I don't want anybody that wants to comment not be able to, but
yeah, this is Tyson again. Thank you, Mr. Morrissey, and I also, like several of you, like what some of the recommendations that he made for the animal hobby farm. There's a couple things in there. I like the butchering too, and the peacocks we'll have to discuss. But I can live with some of these recommendations. But like all of you, I need to see it put in stone where we can see the whole big picture. Because I know we're running out of time. But this has to come through a vote if we're going to add in some of Mr. Morrissey's recommendations, or
that's on our agenda for today's regular meeting.
The end of the 4 o'clock meeting.
The end of the meeting.
I'm trying to be quick here. This is do not. I have a clarification. Acreages and, owning a couple horses on your acreage and all that, that's in a different provision for large animals, correct? So we're not...
Correct. Horses are specifically excluded from hobby farm and have separate regulations that address them.
Because they should be on a regular farm, or in an agricultural area, think in a different ordinance. I didn't want to bring that up. I just wanted to have a point of clarification that they were not included in the hobby farm.
They are not included in the hobby farm.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, whatever?
This is Schrader. I'll just kind of go over some of the staff comments regarding the proposed changes. Regarding the peacocks, you know, I think we aren't real concerned on that. That's, I would say, I can see, you know, the thought process behind listing them under prohibited. If they're going to be switched from the small to the large / intermediate, I can, you know, see an argument for that as well, since that requires the minimum 40,000 square foot. So there's not going to be a lot of situations probably where they're going to have the size that they would be able to have the peacocks. So I don't have a lot of comment on that. Staff does have some concern with going all the way from 20,000 square foot down to 5,000 square foot. I do understand, you know, the argument on the other side of how many lots that's going to essentially disqualify from being able to have. But the flip side of that is we are talking about farm animals inside the city limits, and we intentionally drafted what staff was, you know, recommending for an ordinance with that in mind and trying to protect adjoining property owners. And it was kind of our thought that, you know, for a lot that doesn't meet that 20,000 square foot, they still have the option of requesting a variance and going before the board. And if they have a unique situation, compelling reasons why their situation, you know, might be more acceptable. That was our thought process. That said, you know, I think if you're going to look to lower it, that's certainly, you know, something that can be looked at. We're a little concerned on going all the way down to 5,000. We do, regarding the 250 foot radial feet, that would not be a huge deal, I don't think, if it got switched to just looking across the street. The only thing I would comment on is in the wording of the proposed, it specifies occupied property. We would oppose using that word occupy. We don't want to get into a situation where we're having to make an assessment of whether or not a property is occupied or not. We think that property owners would have to sign off on this. And I mean, whether it's an occupied property or not, number one, shouldn't have bearing on whether or not it needs the signature, and number two, we don't want to try and get into that where we're making that assessment. And then we are okay with adding the butchering.
I have a question.
This is Paul. If I could just maybe speak really quickly to one of the points. Yeah, I think that when we started this process, it was to put something in place, some regulation in place that folks knew where they were at and what they would do. I think the commission's intent was to allow for hobby farms. And I think that the 20,000 is too restrictive for us to get to that goal. While I get where staff's concern is with going all the way down to 5,000, it doesn't eliminate protections for property owners. It still maintains the requirement for sign-off. So just because it allows more folks to be included in this process doesn't mean that it's necessarily detrimental to adjoining property owners, because they're still required to have that sign-off. So I guess I just wanted to throw that out, that I really feel that the intent of this getting crafted and Board of Adjustment and P&Z really calling for some guidance on this was because we were just sort of left hanging with too many applications, and there was a void that needed filled. And if we make this too restrictive, requiring over 20,000 square feet of usable land, we're sort of in the same boat as everybody.
I would disagree with that, Tavis. I'm sorry, but I think this is Holdeman, by the way. I don't know, 20,000 feet may be too restrictive. I think 5,000 feet's way too lenient. So I think that there are a lot of people out there who do not want to be in an area where there are farm animals being raised. That's why they live in the city.
And those people would still have that recourse of the signature.
Not necessarily, not if you eliminate the 250-foot boundary. They may not.
So can we
So
make,
5 houses down, okay, okay, then what if we maintained that, but still allowed for the majority of people to avoid having to get a special permit? That's what's so frustrating about this process, is that we wanted to avoid special permits, and by the square footage requirement, we pushed everybody towards special permits.
No, not necessarily, have we? Because, well, okay, I'm sorry. I follow what you're saying now. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
so my proposal is now, can we meet in the middle where, I mean, I still want a justification from staff why they're sticking to 20,000 feet, and why we aren't going down to 5,000 feet. But putting that aside, can we meet in the middle and say 10,000 feet?
Well, that's, yeah, good, Eric. A good thought, Eric. We're getting time where we're probably going to have to cut off this discussion. This item is on the agenda for our regular meeting, so
We can continue the discussion.
bring that up then. We'll continue it.
Okay, thank you.
I
Thanks.
think we need an actual motion to adjourn
Do we?
the special meeting.
Okay, we need a motion to
So
adjourn the
moved.
special meeting second,
Second.
or is there a second?
Do not so
Second.
moved.
Okay, been moved and seconded to adjourn special meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The meeting's adjourned. We're getting started a few minutes late here. It's 3 minutes after 4 by the clock on the wall. We'll call to order the regular meeting for August 1st, 2017, for the Planning, Programming, and Zoning Commission of the City of Waterloo, Iowa. We have, first item on the agenda is the approval of the August 1st, 2017 agenda. We'll entertain a motion for that.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do you have a moved and seconded? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's carried. Approval of, next item is approval of the minutes of the regular meeting from July 11th, 2017. Those were mailed out to you in your packet.
I just have one comment on the minutes.
Okay.
If I could. I'm pretty sure that City Councilman Tom Powers was here as well, and he was neglected to be represented. I know Jerome Amos was mentioned, but I believe Tom Powers was here also. He was just in the back, not up front. Does that make a difference?
Were you here, Tom? He was.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
have another comment on those minutes. Sue, were you present at the last meeting?
I was not.
Okay, so she cannot be both present and not present at the same meeting?
Yeah,
And that'd be good if she,
be good.
You're right.
By
I was
location?
invisible.
okay.
She's done some sneaky things.
I have.
All right. Are there any other corrections or comments? Okay, if not, we'll entertain a motion for their approval as amended, showing that Sue Gustafson, or
Sue Flynn.
Flynn, excuse me, Sue Flynn was not here, and that Councilman Tom Powers was here.
I so move that we accept the amended minutes.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, that carries. Thank you. Financial report for June of 2017, Mr. Anderson.
This is Anderson with staff. So this is our end of the year for that fiscal year report. So as you're looking at the percentages on the right-hand side of 100%, you can see where we met the 100% mark. On the sale of property, we had a couple of properties that we had some legalities to work with near the end of the year, so we didn't get those closed until this fiscal year. But overall, we still made the budget as a whole in terms of the revenue and the expense portions going through.
Are there any questions for Mr. Anderson?
This is Duna. I never got the packet, the hard paper copy packet in the mail. So also I never got the financial report. So I'm looking on with
We can get you one.
Commissioner Flynn.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll entertain a motion for the approval of the financial report through June of 2017.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Now we come to the time when people in the audience are invited to make presentations to us on on items not on today's agenda. So if you would like to make a brief presentation to the Commission on something that's not on the agenda for today, please come to the microphone, give us your name and your address, and a brief description of your concern.
Pat Morrissey, 24 West 3rd Street. And I just wanted to mention that I'm going to have to leave here, and I would hope that, Mr. Chairman, that you would keep the comments that I made before when that item comes up. You keep those in mind.
Yes, sir.
I'll have to leave.
Will do. All right, and thank you for your input. Any other? Okay. Agenda items. First item is a special permit. It's a request for a special permit by Silver Lakes Estates Incorporated to allow filling upon the property within an R2 1 and 2 family residential district located west of 18 Silver Lake Drive. It's pages 13 through 24 in your packet. We have a staff report.
This is Andera staff. They are requesting approval of a fill permit to bring clean fill onto the property in question for the purposes of constructing a berm to the north of the roadway, prevent it from washing out in the future. Area is zoned R2 and has been zoned as such since 1969. Surrounding land uses are as follows. North is vacant development ground and single-family uses along East Shawless Road, zoned A1. South is single-family homes, zoned R2. East is unincorporated Blackhawk County, zoned A, agricultural district. And west is vacant development ground and single-family dwellings along Falk Road, zoned A1. The area is comprised of residential dwellings, with most of the dwellings being constructed in the middle 1970s. The applicant is requesting approval of a special permit to establish a fill site to bring clean fill, to create a berm to prevent Silver Lake Drive from washing out as it done in the past. The toe of the berm ranges from 831.6 feet to as high as 835.4 feet along Silver Lake Drive, which is an approximately 1 to 20 slope. Overall, the proposed fill for the site is 220 cubic yards. Based on the current land elevations and many different contours, a more gradual plan, it does not appear that the fill request would negatively impact the area. The applicant's engineer has submitted a letter and additional information indicating that the berm would not have a negative impact upon flooding conditions in the area. With the designation of a clean fill site, the applicant must abide by the regulations set forth by Blackhawk County Department of Health and may need to submit a rubble fill application, the corresponding fee, cash bond or surety bond, a plan detailing what is to be filled and used and what elevation the area is to be filled to the health department. There is an underground electrical line owned by Mid-American Energy along the north side of Silver Lake Drive, where the new berm is located, and staff has had discussion with Mid-American Energy, and the clean fill will not negatively impact the underground utility due to there being no cutting of the ground taking place. Staff is aware that there are multiple residents in the area that have expressed concerns with the berm that will have a negative impact on flooding conditions that can push water onto their properties. It is staff's recommendation that the request for special permit to allow for the clean fill be approved for the following reasons. Would not appear to have a negative impact upon the surrounding area. The request would not appear to have a negative impact upon pedestrian or traffic conditions within the surrounding area. The request is in conformance with the future land use map and comprehensive plan for this area, which is designated as low density residential. And the proposed fill will not negatively impact underground electrical line owned by Mid-American Energy on the north side of Silver Lake Drive, as the applicant is not cutting into the ground with the new fill.
Okay, are there questions for staff?
Yes, this is do not. Staff is aware of multiple residents in the area that have expressed concerns that the berm will have a negative impact on flooding conditions and it could push water onto their properties. Has that been addressed in I know you said in the staff report that
We know
staff
that
was aware of it, but has it been addressed?
I did not receive any calls or anything on it, so, and I don't believe any other staff person did as well, but we are aware that there are concerns from other residents in the area.
I think we're going to hear from some today. I think there's several in the audience, which is fine. Eric, were you done?
What now?
Were you done?
Yeah, I was.
Okay.
That was my question for this item.
Okay, because I have a question on this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if it's in a flood zone, don't you have to get FEMA's approval for anything?
No, not necessarily not. You can fill in the 100-year floodplain with a
Or is that only
proper
the
fill plan.
floodway? Chad?
Floodway is where you have the most
You have to
issues
get
there.
there. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And this is Butchin, but I know of a property on Folk Road that the last time that there was flooding, and it did come down Folk, and I know that's what this is trying to prevent, but it did reach their driveway. It did not get in there, up into their yard, but driving was prohibited on that street. It did create some problems with having to go around and stuff, so I know there's a house in that area right now that is for sale, and that's that same house, so it's definitely a concern for them. I'm not sure they're here, but I don't see them.
Okay.
This is Flynn. So staff is confident that it would not create flooding issues?
Based on what the engineer, and the engineer for the applicant is here and could possibly address that,
Okay.
but based on what they've submitted, they don't believe it will negatively impact any flooding conditions in the area.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions for staff? I guess not. Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak either for or, well, first off, is the applicant here? Or someone representing the applicant, and if so, would you like to make your presentation?
My name's Denny Stabell, and I'm president of Silver Lakes, and we meant no harm to our neighbors. We've always tried to get along. It's just that in 2008, we did sandbag that entire area, which we're talking about. And we worked till about 2:30 in the morning doing so. Yeah, maybe 1:30, I can't remember for sure, it's been a long time ago. But we're all getting older now, and we had a lot of volunteer help at that time. And some of them my employees and some of them just friends and relatives. So it had came up several times during the years at our, and we have a meeting twice a year, spring and fall, that maybe we should build a small berm to compensate for any sandbagging we might have to do. No action was taken because we were concentrating on getting our road resurfaced. And as we were, you know, it's extra money out of our pocket besides taxes, so we did not have a lot of money to spend. But it was determined that last year, 2016, when the water was predicted to come higher, maybe I should try to get some dirt in there. And that's what we did, and we temporarily graded it with the idea that we would have to taper it. And I thought we had some pictures on that. I know I have some over here I'd be happy to give to you. But what we did is we just temporarily put the dirt in and graded it off. Then this spring, at the spring meeting, we decided that we voted on, the majority, that we finish the project so that we could grade it, get enough dirt off on the slope, and plant grass seed on it. Now, if the people in the crowd don't have pictures, my wife Rita, would you hand those little brochures out? Pamphlets, so to speak. It was not anything that we figured would be any worse than sandbagging. And like I say, the average age is closer probably to 60. Personally, I'm 70, and we have one young lady of 85. So we have a few young people, but it's hard to get volunteer help. So we just was kind of looking to the future, I guess. And we can't mow it. Now, I do have some pictures here that if you would like to give that out. Or Kirk, do you have?
Did those get loaded?
Pictures?
Yeah.
I just handed them out.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to have them in so
okay.
Bring them up on screen.
How about if we handle it? Is it all right to hand the pictures?
We have this picture.
We just.
And we have a picture in our packet.
There you go. All right, you got the one that I went and I mowed. We had a gentleman from Wyden Road came up last week on his bike, and he was quizzing me about it. And so I said, well, I'll get on my bike and we'll ride up there and show you where it's at. And so we did. And so then after that, I decided to mow that. And you can see that's where we're at. So again, I thank you. And once Eric contacted me and informed me that we needed a special permit for this, we went to work on it. The biggest problem I think we had was Kirk's mother had passed away, and he was tied up, and every other engineer I called was either honest enough to say that they didn't have time to do it or they weren't interested, and that's where the delay came, and I apologize for that. But as soon as we got the paperwork, they gave it to Eric and went from there. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Kirk Eschelman with Kess and Associates. We're the ones that prepared the report and took the elevation shots. I'm here basically to answer any technical questions you may have. Like Eric, you were asking about, was that addressed to the flowage, whether that would have any impact or not. If you look at that, well, what you're being shown right there, there's a farm field between the north edge of Silver Lake Drive and the houses that are on the south side of Shawless Road. Have you got an aerial that shows more than that? Anyway, the elevation of Shawless Road itself, which can be considered a barrier to flow, is a little lower than the roadway. But the ground around the houses north of this site along Shawless Road is at the same elevation that we're using for the top of the berm. So the houses on the north side, or on the south side of Shawless Road, constitute as much of an obstruction as what this berm does. Now, the hydrological effect of this versus if you look further to the south of Silver Lake, that rises in a hill to the south of the Silver Lake development. Vertically, that rises over 50 feet in the area where Silver Lake is. It rises over 30 feet in Folk Road. And typical of like when you see a boat moving through the water, you see impact, the wave in front of the boat. And the same thing happens here, that hill south of the entire project will raise water levels more so than what you're looking at right here.
I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I guess I'm confused. What hill are you talking about?
On the farm.
There's a hill, if you look at the topography of the entire area.
Yeah, we don't have that here.
Is that what, that's not what this is?
No,
Okay.
it's the berm. I guess I'm just
you
going
got
from my
a-
own recollection of having been out there. It seemed pretty flat
It's
until
not.
you get up a ways away.
If I stand on the south end of Silver Lake Drive
Yeah.
and look at the houses south of there, there's a big hill there. That's what I'm talking about, has an impact on the flowage.
Okay.
And that also shows up in the fact that the question you had asked about floodplain versus floodway. The floodway is impacted by that hill.
Okay, now I have a question, just because I think I'm stupid in this area. You have the berm on one side, but you don't have a protective anything on the body of water at the bottom of the screen. If you look at the image that's on the television screen right here, so you have the berm on the opposite side of the body of water.
That's correct. That's an isolated body of water. Basically, it's a man-made lake.
Okay, so it wouldn't cause
The body of water in there rises and flows with it, rises and lowers with the groundwater.
Okay.
And it does have, the river level does have some impact because of the sandy soil conditions out there, that it can go up and down
Okay.
with the river, but it does not, that is not part of the flowage issue.
Okay, so
The Cedar River and Sink Creek are the two bodies of water contributing to any issues out there.
okay, so and they're on the side of the berm, according to the picture. The body of water that you mentioned are on the side of the berm in the picture, and the man-made lake is on the opposite side. Doesn't cause any flooding problems. Okay.
I'm having none of trouble understanding the question. The berms on the north side took
Yeah,
with what's
if you
coming
look at
off the Cedar River.
Yeah, if you look at page 16, it'll show you the location of the berm in, and then there's Sink Creek Pond, which is what they're talking about.
This is a pond here.
It's a better overall.
Well, I think what he's talking about is Silver Lake itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the lake sits here.
Yeah.
These are the houses.
The water that you're seeing in the south part of that photo is actually Silver Lake itself.
Okay.
I'm not, this is Butchin, I'm wondering if what he meant was possibly the Cedar River being north of the berm?
It's a long ways, yeah.
But-
it's
but
quite a ways down.
That's what I was kind of thinking, maybe.
Actually,
he was
if
thinking.
you're familiar with the area, the floodway runs parallel with the river, passes from northwest to southeast through the intersection of Whedon Road and East Shawless. So that's how far east of this location is the floodway.
Okay. So that property that I was talking about, where the water did come down Folk, but it didn't affect the houses on that road, that water comes from the Cedar River or from the drive?
Yes.
From the
Between that and Sink.
Sink Creek?
Yeah.
So the berm would prevent that from coming in
From
that
flowage
area?
from that direction. What it amounts to is you've got enough, if you look at the overall area with the aerial photography, between the tree vegetation around the residences along Shawless Road and along the back sides of the properties.
Right.
That constitutes an impediment to the flow.
Okay.
Shawless Road itself does, the houses do, as well as what's way out of this picture is the current recreation trail that's out there was a railroad bed, and it was common practice when that railroad bed was installed to place the bed, not the ballast or the tracks, but the bed at least 1 foot above flood.
Right.
So that in itself constitutes a restriction to the flow.
Right. Okay.
I've been up here long enough. Anybody got any other questions?
Yeah, I do, Kirk. I'm sorry. Just one quick one. Will this berm, as it redirects water around, would that cause an issue of potential washout or issues with higher velocity for the properties along Folk Road?
The berm itself, I would fully expect that berm to actually wash out itself before it actually caused any damage over on Folk.
Okay.
There's not going to be that much flowage.
Okay.
A lot of that's trying to think of the term, but basically it's what I sometimes refer to as backwater. In other
Okay.
words, it's pushed out there, but it's so far away from the main channel that there isn't much flow to it.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, if anyone else would like to say anything for or against, please come up to the mic, give us your name, address, and make your brief statement regarding
Pete
this.
Christensen, 5147 Falk Road, corner of Falk and Silver Lake Drive. I built my house in 1965, and Silver Lake was a gravel pit owned by Waterloo Dredge, so it's not man-made, if you call gravel pit man-made. Nobody had any water in basements or any flooding until '08. I think we all had some. Most of the county did. Well, in last September, when the water was coming up, people at Silver Lake decided they were going to put this berm in, keep the water from going in their basements. It went in a lot of their walkout basements in '08 because the water broached the road and filled the lake up some. But I think now they're trying to divert the water back into their farm field to the north of Silver Lake Drive, and it's going to affect us, all of us along Falk Road, and I think along Shawless. It's just one of those things that if it was done today, the DNR would not allow that subdivision to be built, I don't believe, because of what's going on with waters and everything. So we, along Falk and Shawless, are not too happy with this, and we're kind of against it. So I guess if you got any questions, I can sit down.
I just have one question for you. This is Castle. Do you know if you were affected at all by water when they put in the sandbags? Did that have any effect?
By that time, we were all wet.
Okay.
That was after the fact, basically.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Anyone else, please come forward.
Lori McIntyre, 5137 Folk Road. In '08, it was a catastrophe. In 2016, another one. I have pictures to show we got flooded from the back before we got flooded ever from the street. The only time we got water in our yard from the street is from Frickson Trucking bringing the dirt back. Then we would get that wake that had all that grunge in it. No sandbags will ever help us because they shut off the pump system out there and it comes up through our drains. I can show you. In 2016 even. We get hydrostatic water after. We never got any of that until after 2016. I have a completely finished basement, and we've redone it 3 times. And yes, houses are for sale out there, and we're all affected. I didn't realize I had to have pictures printed off, but I have pictures of Quentin Hart coming out to help us out in the front, in the fire department, asking Frickson Trucking, please go around and let these people be. They're trying to help. And we got flooded in our backyard, and it was disgusting. The food and crap that come up in our yards. We didn't get any in our front yard, just our backyard. That was in 16. Thank you.
This is Butchin. I just have one quick question.
Yes.
Because I don't understand. What is hydrostatic water? What does that mean?
Just water, nice clean water that comes up out of the ground. You can get it at the top of the mountain anymore, you know.
Yeah.
But we get that now. We never did that until 2016 again.
Okay.
But then when the city shuts off our pumps, then we get water everywhere. It comes up our toilets and that. But our only yard flooding is from the back. Because it comes up out of our drains. I don't care. You could bring us 5 million sandbags to sandbag around our house. It's not going to do us anything. But I bless Quentin Hart for coming out and helping us and other city people to try to resolve our problem, because it's horrible.
So do you believe
flooding really isn't our thing? It's coming up.
Okay.
Through our sewers, because they shut off the sewer system, but our flooding actually comes from the back. But I can print the pictures and show you. If anybody wants my phone to look at, I still have pictures. We never had any water in our front yard till Frickson pushed it in our yard, the grunge, but all the flooding was from the back with everybody's garbage. The water does come across Shawless. That's like, in 08, that's what got us the first time. We have a lower garage. We hadn't got any water in the front yet. We were trying to save our snowblowers and that. The first time we got out there, I lost one flip-flop. On the next thing, we about lost my husband, because that's how big of a tidal wave come from the back. So, thank you.
Excuse me. Sorry, this is Flynn, and I just had a question. You said it's coming up through the sewer.
Mm-hmm.
So
Why don't I turn it down?
how do you feel the berm would affect the sewer?
No, that isn't part. Quentin Hart is trying to figure out with our thing since it's changed. But I'm telling you, our yard only flooded in 2016 from the back.
Okay.
And I have pictures of both. We never got water in the front at all, just
So
from
in
the back.
08, it only
08, it was a catastrophe.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
And we got it from the back first in 08, though.
Okay.
Because we lost everything in the back. It was up, you know. But we got hit by a tidal wave coming from the back of our yard, from Silver Lake area, before we got it from the other side.
Okay.
Because we tried to get mowers and that out, and it was, you know, it was a total loss.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
clarification.
Anyone else that would like to make comments either for or against this item?
Richard Schaefer, 5449 Wyden Road, Waterloo. I've been living down there since '95 on my property, and I've seen it flood a lot of times, probably at least 12 times. The way it happens, the river comes up. I have a creek on my property, so what's it do? It comes right back up the creek and goes across the road, Wyden Road, and goes into the ponds that are off to the west side of Wyden Road. They fill up and it backs up and it goes over to towards this area at Silver Lake we're talking about. 2008, 500-year flood. What? 500 years. Who's going to be around? The next one. We've had some 100-year. We had a 100-year flood. Not as bad. Same thing. All the water went that same direction. And if I feel that this berm thing is not going to affect anything because it comes from the other way, and I don't see where it's going to help or hurt anything because it's coming up from the back and also comes across Shawless Road at the same time. We were evacuated by a boat. That's how bad it is at my house. And I'm down actually what you would probably call downstream from this area. There's nothing I can do. It's going to get me, no matter what. So I see where this berm has no effect on any water flow at all because it's coming from both directions, from the river to the north and back up from the south. And it's going to get, like I said, it's the 500-year flood that they're talking about in '08. The one in 16 was just a few feet less than that on the, I can't remember the numbers for sure. So the chances of this happening are so slim in the future, which I do believe a lot of the problem is, and we can't do nothing about it, is building. You're taking ground out of that will absorb water and hold it, and you're putting concrete in. What's concrete do? It sheds water, puts it into our creeks, puts it into our rivers. I think the big main thing, one thing that would help would be bigger retention ponds on building sites. I've been in the construction business for almost 40 years, and I was glad to see that they start putting them in, but I think they're going to have to put bigger ones in to retain this more water from more concrete. It's not just one little thing. It's a combination of a lot of things that need to be addressed here. And if this berm is going to save, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars of repairs and stuff, I believe it's worth it. Even though it's not going to put any more water on me, even though I'm downstream, because mine comes from the south, not the north. But this, I can't see no reason, if they sandbag it every time, or if they put a permanent berm in, it's going to be the same result. And I haven't heard anything from anybody saying that they really went up and protested them putting in the sandbags in '08 and 16. That's all I've got to say right now at this present time.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions? Thank you.
This is Kirk again. I'd like to give a point of explanation to some of his comments just now. Not to argue with him, but number one, even Iowa DNR agree and FEMA agree. What happened in 2008, they don't know how to measure. They are also, FEMA is moving away from the so-called 100-year and 500-year designations because it's statistically not accurate. The so-called 100-year flood, and we've been drifting into it by calling it a 1% event. Well, if you take 1% of 365 days, you're looking at almost, you could have 4 a year of those events. The so-called 500 is a 0.2%, so maybe you might see one every 5 years get that high. I've done enough survey work for FEMA upstream and downstream from Waterloo that there was a lot of it that was way above even the so-called 0.2% event. So, yeah, it was a record setter.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else that would like to come forward?
We built our first house out there.
Would you give us your name and address, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Barb Culbertson, 5061 Folk Road. We built our first house up the road and are well aware of the Suburban Heights hill that he talked about. But I also know that each year, as flood time came around, we have watched the water come up that agricultural area behind our houses. That's how we always judged, you know, how the flood was coming. It had never gotten up to the property. And then, you know, and as far as Silver Lake, it's a rock quarry that was my father worked in, and it's a very lovely area back there. And it is spring fed. However, if we start to fill in those areas, that water has to have somewhere to go when it's flooding. It's going to push that water farther up the field, closer to our houses, and I'm very concerned about anything blocking the flow of the land.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you all for your comments. Commissioners, we'll have some discussion amongst ourselves or a motion.
Well, this is Butch, I really appreciated the comment that one of you made about more retention ponds. I think that's a very good idea, and hopefully something that can help that area. Bigger, yeah. Mm-hmm. Bigger, yeah, bigger, deeper, whatever. Bigger. So whether engineers work on that or who works on that, that makes perfect sense to me. I certainly hear the frustration of the gal that talked about the water coming in from the back and the front and from the sewers. I've never had to live through that. I can't imagine what that must be like. So, you know, something needs to be addressed here to try to help those people. And I've kind of heard it both ways, so I'm still kind of up in the air here.
Were you done?
I am.
Sorry. My comment was, this is do not, by the way. My comment was, I understand both sides where both sides don't want flooding. So if you're for the berm, you don't want flooding from one direction. If you're against the berm, you don't want flooding being pushed down the hill or down the stream to you, because the north side no longer has the berm location no longer has the flooding issue because they built the berm. So they put the flooding issue downstream or, you know, away from them toward you. And so I kind of understand both positions. And, you know, I'm like you, Commissioner Bunchen, of like I'm up in the air, you know. So
this is Flynn. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
And it look like the berm has already started to be constructed, it's showing. So when did that construction start? Do we know that?
Denny Stabell, number 16 Silver Lakes, again, president. In 2016, a number of us were sandbagging, and we had talked about this berm ever since 2008. So as an emergency, they asked me to get some dirt. So it was in 2016. That set until the spring when we decided to grade so we could plant grass seed and mow. We weren't putting any dirt any higher. We were just trying to get it so we could mow it. Again, I think you all have this picture, and I do have some that I had that we did actually show us mowing that, just the front part, but then I had to stop because we hadn't got a chance to grade it anymore because we got stopped. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I just thank you. I wondered when then construction.
Right, and the problem arose when the second hauling of dirt became in, and there was quite a large piles. He just dumped it. He didn't have time to grade it, so we had a gentleman who was going to grade it for us. And the other thing I guess I didn't mention earlier was that we did our road and we had a stop at the horse barn. And then you go up towards number 26, we started again. Now, Don from Prairie Road Builders was kind enough to say, I'll come back. But he did not want us to complete our road because he knew any work we would do on that berm, one way or the other, was going to destroy our road. And we put a lot of money into that out of our own pockets. So, again, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And then in the floods of 08 and of 16, did the Silver Lake properties get the sewer back up and the water flow from the river and the creek?
Most of our problem is Silver Lake Springs, but there was some sandbagging on three homes, I believe, but they're basement walkouts. 2 of them have corrected it. There might have been a 4th one. 2 of them have corrected that problem. I think the 3rd one, I think there was 4, and 3 of them have corrected that problem by building the backyard up slightly to meet a certain level, so that they hope that the springs in the creek or in the lake wouldn't keep filling. It's like a bathtub that doesn't have a drain, and it just keeps filling. And so
with the potential of the berm, would that, you do not feel that would create more problem for your neighbors? Because where's that water going to go?
Okay, did I understand the question? I'm not sure I did. I apologize.
May I jump in here? Jamie Cook, 2 Silver Lake Drive. In 08, we sandbagged the entire area that the berm now occupies. The reason for that was that the water in the agricultural area was spilling across our roadway into our lake. As Danny describes it, it's like a bathtub without a drain. We already had flooded basements in our area, and as Mr. Eshelman indicates, the presence of those sandbags, the presence of the berm, which are functionally equivalent, have no hydrologic effect on the escaping of the water from that agriculture area. In fact, if you had a larger topographic map, the flow is, as it was Mr. Schaefer? Thank you, sir. From Whedon described it. It's not large enough, but if you follow this around, yeah, there's an old oxbow. I think we were describing it as Sink Creek Lake. We call it Fish Lake. The water flows naturally from this agricultural area over to Fish Lake and then back towards the river. We're not, the presence of sandbags on that arc of that roadway, nor the presence of a berm on that roadway does anything to the flow other than keeping the water from intruding over our lane, over Silver Lake Drive, into Silver Lake. Because during high water times, that lake rises with the river, and our solution to that was after 08, we put in a culvert that goes directly into Fish Lake, away from these folks, so that as to divert water from ours further upstream. So instead of creating a problem, we're only trying to protect our own property without it creating any more problems. Does that answer your question?
Sure does. Thank you.
So I have a question for the engineer. Will this berm prevent flooded homes in this neighborhood, or, I mean, will it protect the homes from Silver Lake, or is it simply to protect the road and, as Mr. Cook said, the lake itself?
As forgive me, I'm terrible on names. Anyway, as Denny's been stating, yeah, you got that map over there on that side. That's actually the FEMA flood map. The darker hatches that you're looking at, the one across the center, is the floodway for the Cedar River. Now, there's already a lot of homes, development, and everything else in that area that under FEMA guidelines would not be permitted at this date. The there's a smaller one down in the lower left-hand corner. That's where St. Creek passes through. Now, it actually, that's the floodway showing on it. There are a couple of lakes back in that area. There are remnant oxbow lakes from when the Cedar River was much bigger than it is now.
Mm-hmm.
And it was meandering back and forth across the river valley as the river got smaller. So effectively, those are old river bottom. And that's where some of the issue comes from. What's referred to as actually Silver Lake. Yes, it was a rock quarry, but with the ground around it. My own opinion, I've never had anybody. I'm new to this area. I only moved here in April of 1990, so I have to learn history the hard way. But my understanding was that's why the property around those houses is higher, is because that's the overburden that was pushed off the rock, made a ring all the way around there. So if what you're talking about are that berm impacting, you're only talking at most 6/10 of a foot, just barely just over a half a foot above the edge of the roadway that's already there. So minimal impact on the flowage. And like was said, at the northeast corner that's being shown, the two limits on each end of the berm. The one at the northeast corner is where the driveway goes back to another property at the northeast corner. That's raised, and like was said, to alleviate some of that problem, had culverts installed. So now rather than being backed up by that driveway, it's allowed to flow through onto that backwater on the east side of the property. So there's flowage there that wasn't there before. And then you get the minor flow that goes around the other direction.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Well, I guess I'm not sure. The berm itself will not necessarily protect the homes along Silver Lake Drive. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
It will impair. It will protect them somewhat more than what they've got now.
Okay.
And it would be more effective than sandbags.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to comment either for or against this item? Okay, I guess we're into the talking with the commissioners stage anyway. Any other discussion? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
Do we have to motion to close public comment and then discussion?
Or it's not a public hearing.
So my understanding is it would protect better the Silver Creek homes, but the ones on Folk are still not being addressed.
That's my understanding.
Is that right? So somebody needs to address those.
Is that a separate issue, or is that?
I'm just saying, I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, that's not.
But that's not part of this.
Part of it.
I know.
Right, yeah.
I know.
What I'm saying, since it's a separate issue, does that need to be brought up as a separate issue? Like at another meeting or at a future meeting?
Yeah.
That would be
A total
something
other
that-
issue, yeah.
Total other issue that the city would have to address. That would be probably in the engineering department, I assume.
Okay.
Okay.
It's Tyson, and I can certainly understand what the folks at Silver Lakes are trying to do and with their property and stop the water. And I can also feel the pain of the folks at or under this spring, because I live in a spring, on top of a spring too, and yes, I got water in 2008 and 2007, and yeah, I spent some money to try to get it stopped, but every year I'm still scared, because when it rains, I don't know what's going to happen. And it's an emotional thing here, and we just want to do the best for what's for the folks and our commission. And I just want to make sure that if we do vote, that I'd entertain a roll call vote. I guess I want the folks to know where we stand on these issues, knowing that maybe we can't do anything because the spring is at, and the city and the county, and what else can be done, because we don't have the monies right now. But so that's just where I feel. But I'd like to see a roll call vote if we do vote.
Okay.
Could I just have one more, sorry, this is Castle, one more clarification. So reading through the packet, my understanding is the berm is to protect the road from washing out, and it doesn't really have much to do with the protection of the houses.
May I?
Okay, sure.
This should actually give you the technical, but I can give you the practical. It would have, as Mr. Eshelman says, some impact on protecting the houses. We observed personally in 2008 that with the increased water coming across the roadway, there was a lot of intrusion in the paving that caused a lot of alligatoring the next spring, and that is why, in part, we had to resurface this year. But the thing is, the roadway itself, I think if one looked at it historically, was intended as a natural levee as well. So if you denigrate the integrity of that roadway, then you've caused an even greater problem for the properties. So it is the immediate impact to protect the properties, in part. Is the greater effort to protect the roadway? Yes. But if you protect the roadway, you protect the properties. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any other discussion or motion?
Great.
Yes, Kirk.
To address your statement about that roadway, that's one of the differences between asphalt pavements and Portland cement concrete pavement. Portland cement concrete pavement is rigid, so yes, you'll see cracks in it. And if we have a complete washout underneath from where, say, a water main broke and pumped a whole mess of water for several days down through the storm sewer, and you end up with a cavity under the pavement, that's when you see a failure in that pavement, and you end up with sinkholes like you see in the news that literally can eat a car up. The difference is with asphalt pavement, a little bit lower cost up front, more maintenance. But it is also a flexible pavement. So the minute you get the ground underneath that roadway, and it may look just fine on the surface, but you turn around and drive a heavy truck around there, and now all of a sudden that roadbed is wet, soggy, and it wants to move. That pavement's going to flex right with it, and that's when you end up that roadbed and that asphalt pavement can literally fail. And that's one of the reasons why, yes, right now they're in the process of trying to resurface that roadway again.
Okay.
Well, I'm just thinking that some protection is better than no protection. And, you know, this berm is a start of having some protection. So, I mean, I guess that's where I am.
Agreed, but I'll play the devil's advocate here and say, what about the folks that live
on the
along Folk Road and,
Yeah,
and
but
so on, who
we-
may be impacted negatively.
We said in a previous comment, we said that that was sort of a separate issue. So, and it, like it was
It
like a
is,
couple
but
minutes earlier.
I guess what I'm saying is I don't want to see one guy do something to make it bad, make it worse for the others.
Yeah.
Solving the flooding problem is a separate issue
Yeah,
altogether.
I understand that. I kind of think that that's where the catch-22 is. It's like if you don't protect, if you don't start with something protecting one side, you're gonna have a problem either way of the side that you don't protect. Do you get what I'm saying?
I do.
Okay.
So I just have one question. You talked about the disadvantages of the pavement versus the blacktop. So which way is the roadway being refixed now?
It's asphalt.
It is asphalt. Okay.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, we need a motion to move on.
I guess I would move for a roll call vote on
Well,
this.
that's already been asked for.
He asked, but I didn't know if we'd moved to do that.
I don't think we need a motion to do
Okay.
that, but we need a motion to get this item
On the table.
on the table so we can vote.
All right. So I guess I move to vote on the request by Silver Lakes Estates for the special permit for the berm. Does that make sense?
Are you saying you move to approve the special request to allow them to construct their berm?
Well, we aren't voting yet. I thought you wanted me to bring it up for a
No,
vote.
I just didn't understand your motion.
It needs to be a motion either in the affirmative or negative.
You can move to deny it, or you can move to approve it.
Okay, I vote to approve it.
To approve.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved to approve the request for a special permit to allow for a clean fill site, and seconded. We'll have a roll call vote. In favor, say yes. Opposed, say no. Button?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, Tyson?
Yes.
Okay. Hall?
Not here.
Did he say no?
He said no.
Okay. Thank you. Castle?
No.
Flynn?
No.
Do not?
Yes.
And the chair votes no. So
This is a recommendation that will go to the Board of Adjustment on the fourth Tuesday of the month, which I think is August 22nd at 4 o'clock.
So that, but the motion does not carry.
Correct.
So
it's a recommendation of denial. to the Board of
Yes. All right, thank you all for coming. Moving on to our next item. Rezoning site plan amendments, request by, number one is a request by Central Holdings LLC to rezone approximately 0.39 acres from R3 multiple residence. All right, sorry. Okay, never mind.
What happened here?
I apologize. We apparently have a different an amended agenda here. We have a plat that includes a request by Midwest Development for the final plat of Audubon Heights 6th Edition, a 42-lot residential subdivision located east of 1873 Crabapple Lane. We have staff report.
This is Andera staff. This was a late addition that got emailed out to the commissioners after the packet actually went out. This is a request to create 42 lots for residential development ranging in size from 10,958 square feet to 24,193 square feet. Request would not appear to have a negative impact upon the area. The requested lots appear to be similar in size and dimension to surrounding lots to the west and represent a logical extension of surrounding development. Request would not appear to have a negative impact upon traffic condition. There will be multiple roadway extensions, including Crabapple Lane, Audubon Drive, Waxwing Way, and Partridge Lane, all of which will be classified as local streets. West Shawless is to the south and is classified as a minor arterial. As each lot in the subdivision is developed, sidewalk will need to be extended along the frontage. Site in question is zoned R1 and has been zoned as such since April of 1979. To the north is zoned R1 with 1 and 2 family residences and single family homes. South is 1 and 2 family zoning district zoned with existing family homes. East is Ag District, zone farm ground, and west is R1, 1 and 2 family residence district with single family homes. Final plat consists of 42 lots containing approximately 16.86 acres of land, which is located north of West Shawless Road and east of Hoff Road. Multiple streets are shown as Tract A, which is Partridge Lane, Tract B, which is Audubon Drive, Tract C, which is Waxwing Way, and Tract D, which is Crabapple Lane, will be extended and will be dedicated to the city for street use upon approval of the final plat. 30-foot building lines are shown on the frontage of each lot, which is the minimum required setback for the R1 zoning district. Tract E is noted in the deed of dedication that the developer shall comply with sidewalk obligations set forth in the deed of dedication or further. Developer shall convey said Tract E to Audubon Heights Homeowner Association or the existing owner of Parcel K, which is also known as 1873 Crabapple Lane. Subdivision ordinance requires the final plat submission include such criteria as boundary of property, engineer certificate, easements, rights-of-way widths, and all information has been submitted by the applicant. The final platted building lines, property lines with dimensions, easements, and right-of-way widths. The applicant has also submitted an engineer certificate of survey and a deed of dedication. There are a few little tweaks that still need to be done in the deed of dedication, but shouldn't prohibit from having it being approved today, and would we get those updated before they are sent to City Council. So it is staff's recommendation that the final plat for Audubon Heights 6th edition be approved for the following reasons. Plat is in accordance with the subdivision ordinance. The new addition can be served by the extension of existing utilities. Plat is in accordance with the comp plan and future land use map, which classify this area as residential. And the plat will create an additional infill development site within the primary growth area.
Okay, are there questions for staff? Okay, thank you, Tim. If there's anyone in the, or well, as the developer here, I think I see him back there, is there anything you'd like to add? Okay. Is anyone else in the room willing to make any comments either for or against this issue? Okay, seeing no one else coming forward, we'll either entertain discussion or a motion.
I forgot. This is do not. When was this item considered for like a preliminary plat or previous steps? I had forgotten at what point on the calendar things were considered in earlier stages.
I want to say this was considered for preliminary plat of 102 lots back in 2014, I would say.
Okay, so I wasn't on the commission, that's why I don't remember it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Tyson. I just had a quick question here in terms of vehicles coming and going out of that area. Is there several ways to get in or out, or is that going to be an issue that our zoning planners looked at, or can someone answer that question? Any unnecessary traffic flow or any inconveniences that when you looked at this request?
We don't see any major concern with traffic flow. There are, let's see, there'll be Crabapple Lane will be an outlet on the Hoff Road, and then Falcon Way is an outlet on the Shawless Road. So there is two outlets and inlets or ingress egress points that go to arterial streets. So,
Okay. All right.
and Audubon Drive will be also being outletted into the existing subdivision to the north too. So good catch.
And this is Butchin. So this West Shawless Road, where, when in our previous discussion of Shawless Road, is that south of this area that's going to have lots of pavement?
This particular area is probably about 5 or 6 miles to the west of where we were just discussing. Was that what your question was?
Yeah, I was just, since we were talking about flooding issues, I was just concerned
And this drains
about that.
into an entirely different.
Okay, thank
This is
you.
closer to 63.
Okay,
on
thank
that
you.
side. Well, I make a motion to accept the request by Midwest Development for the final plat of the Audubon Heights 6th Edition 42-lot residential subdivision located east of 1873 Crabapple Lane.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and second. There's no further discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Good job.
Affirmative, please say, or I'm sorry, in the negative, please say no. Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Now we move on to the rezoning site plan amendments. We have public hearing here. The time is now 5:10. Are you? Oh, we have it here.
It's no public hearing.
Oh, you don't have it down as a public hearing?
Oh, yeah.
We do need to have it, okay. Time is 5:10, and a hearing is scheduled for this time for the request by Central Holdings LLC to rezone approximately 0.39 acres from R3 Multiple Residence District to CP Planned Commercial District for the purpose of constructing a new grocery store located southeast of 205 Franklin Street, near the intersection of Franklin Street and East 2nd Street. At this time, we should receive and place on file a statement of verification signed by Patty McGee stating, I, Patty McGee, do hereby certify that a copy of the attached letter, drawings, aerial photo, and site plan were mailed to each individual on the attached list by regular mail on August 20th, 2017.
July, it's got to
Should be July. Yeah. Okay. We have a motion to receive and place this on file.
I so move.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. Those of you who wish to speak for or against this request, we'd ask that you please come to the microphone and identify yourself by name and address. Members of the commission should also identify themselves before speaking into the microphones. Okay, anyone that would like to come forward? Okay, let's have a staff report first, I'm sorry.
This is Dornoff with staff. It was a request by Central Holdings LLC to rezone approximately 0.39 acres from R3 Multiple Residence District to CP Planned Commercial District, located near the intersection of Franklin and East 2nd. The area is proposed to site is currently zoned R3 Multiple Residence District and is zoned as such since the adoption of the zoning ordinance in 1969. Surrounding uses and zoning: commercial to the north, commercial development, zone CP, commercial district. To the south, residential and commercial development, zone C2, commercial district. East is residential, zoned R3, multiple residence district, and to the west, where commercial development and residential, zone C2, commercial district. Development history: the CVS Pharmacy to the north was built in 2012. To the east is single-family homes built between 1885 and 1924, and a multi-family building built in 1922. To the south is residences built between 1895 and 1922. A commercial business built in 2003, and a fire station. To the west is commercial buildings built between 1917 and 2003. The applicant is requesting to rezone approximately 0.39 acres from R3 Multiple Residence District to CP Plan Commercial District. The CP Plan Commercial District is intended and designed to provide a means for residential compatible commercial development of tracts of land on a unit basis, allowing greater flexibility and diversification of land uses and building locations than conventional single lot method. The CP district allows for use of permitted in a C1 and C2 commercial district, other than the delayed deposit services, which is compatibly designed and deemed an appropriate commercial use for surrounding development. Currently, there's just 2 parcels on the block that are not zoned CP, and this rezone would rezone those 2 parcels to match the rest of the block, so that the developer can develop under a single land zoning code. Therefore, staff recommends the request to rezone approximately 0.39 acres from R3 Multiple Residence District to CP Plan Commercial District be approved for the following reasons. The request would appear not to have a negative impact surrounding the area, would not have a negative impact on pedestrian traffic conditions in the area, and with following conditions that the final site plan meets all applicable city codes, regulations, etc., including not limited to parking, landscaping, screening, drainage, etc.
Okay, any questions for staff?
What is currently, this is Flynn, what is currently, it looks like there's a parking lot there in our design, is this an old?
It's mostly vacant, and then there's a couple buildings there, but yeah, most of it's parking and vacant.
Well, it includes the House of Hope.
Yeah.
The current one, or they're going to move.
They're moving,
Yeah.
Has there been any objection to any of the neighbors or in the area in the family homes?
We did not from the rezoning, so yeah, I know it's going to be complicated because there's so many different requests for the same site. So,
Well, to answer part of your question, there, this might be a different item on the agenda, but there had been some opposition letters that we did get via email before this meeting. We got them today via email. So
I have it right here.
Yeah.
We have hard copy for it as well.
yeah.
I was gonna say, but that opposition was not to the rezoning though.
Right.
So this is a separate issue.
It was a separate, yeah. Yeah, we're just talking about the rezoning now.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I've got these.
I see Mr. Johnson is here. I'm assuming you well, I know you represent the,
Yeah, this is Eric Johnson, the attorney for the developer. You are correct that there's a couple applications or a couple items on the agenda that go together, and from our standpoint, we think they should be considered really together because they really do go together, and you can have more of a whole discussion as to what's going on. My clients are proposing to develop this as a grocery store. As part of that, there's got to be a little bit of a rezone, and there were some vacates. They came up with the plan, and like a lot of times when you come up with a plan, you put on paper what you think makes sense, and then you get some feedback, and then based upon that feedback, you adjust your plan, and that's what's happened here. There was some feedback based upon that Clay Street vacate, and based upon that, and I don't know, Noel, did you announce that at the beginning?
We did not.
Okay. Based upon that, my client is pulling that request at this point in time to vacate Clay Street. There are some questions about landscaping, and that's being worked into the ultimate site plan, which really is going to be out there. And then finally about some off-street parking, or really off-site parking that has been pulled. And so from our standpoint, we'd like to see a look at this globally because it really goes all together. And then I think once you look at that, you'd have a better understanding instead of trying to look at it and approve it piecemeal. And so we have heard some opposition to parts of our plan, not unusual. We've tried to address those, and hopefully we've come up with a better plan, and a plan that is more supported by the neighborhood, but ultimately also by you. So those are my initial comments, just to try and set the table for what we're trying to accomplish.
So this is Flynn.
Yeah.
So you're pulling both vacate requests tonight
Oh,
then?
not both. There's one just to vacate an alley that's
Right.
partly in the block. That is not being pulled. But the one to vacate Clay Street itself is being pulled.
Okay, that's item C2 on your
Yeah.
agenda. I think we'll just go ahead and open the public hearing for not only this, but for item B2, which is the request for a site plan amendment to the CP, so that we can discuss all of this together.
Thanks.
Okay. Time is now 5:21 PM, and a hearing is scheduled at this time on a request by Central Holdings LLC for a site plan amendment to the CP Planned Commercial District for the purpose of constructing a new 26,077 square foot grocery store located near the intersection of Franklin Street and East Second Street. At this time, we should receive and place on file a statement of verification signed by Patty McGee stating that I, Patty McGee, do hereby certify that a copy of the attached letter, drawings, aerial photo, and site plan were mailed to each individual on the attached list by regular mail on July 20th, 2017. Do we have a motion to receive and place this notice on file?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. Again, for those who wish to speak for or against this request, we'd ask that you please come to the microphone and identify yourself by name and address. The members of the commission should also identify themselves before speaking into the microphones, but before that, we're going to have a staff report.
Okay, just starting off with staff, and just note, there might be a few changes that he'll discuss later. This was written last week, and I'm not going to go over what I just went for the rezone. This site plan amendment to the CP Planned Commercial District to allow for construction of 26,077 square foot grocery store located in the intersection of Franklin and East Second. The request to construct a grocery store would not appear to have a negative impact in the neighborhood, as located next to a CVS pharmacy, would be a small format store, and would bring a regular grocery store to an area that doesn't currently have one. The request would not appear to have a negative impact on vehicular or pedestrian traffic movements in the area. The area is served by Logan and Franklin, which are classified as other principal arterials, First and Mullen, which are classified as collectors, Walnut, Pine, and East First, which are classified as local streets. All streets in the area have sidewalks, and a new trail is being constructed as part of the US 63 project that is currently under construction. And Park Avenue, just 2 blocks away, is having bike lanes painted in right now. They will need to submit a drainage plan to be approved by the engineering department. Lincoln Park is located 3 blocks to the southeast. East High is located 0.5 miles to the east. The future land use map designates this area as mixed residential, low, medium, high density residential, professional office, and neighborhood commercial. The proposed use appears being compatible with the comprehensive plan. The applicant is proposing to build a 26,777 square foot grocery store with 110 parking stalls in the parking lot, in addition to 23 additional parking stalls on East Second Street. If a request for a variance to the parking restrictions that is a separate request is approved, the site is zone CP Planned Commercial District and R3 Multiple Residence District, with the applicant requesting to rezone the R3 to CP. The zoning ordinance requires a grocery store and other retail stores that are between 5,000 and 50,000 square feet to provide 1 parking space for every 250 square feet of floor area, which works out to 104 stalls. That's not taking out, it'd actually be a little lower because we don't have any information on mechanicals and that kind of stuff yet. According to the drawings provided, the applicant intends to provide 133 parking stalls, 29 more than required. The proposed building facade is made up of face brick, pigmented rock face block, metal panels, aluminum entrance framing, metal coping, and metal canopies. At tech review on July 25th, it was suggested the loading dock be moved to the north side of the building in order to avoid the issues with attempting to vacate Clay Street. Therefore, staff recommends that the request for a site plan amendment to the CP Planned Commercial District and R3 Multiple Family District near the intersection of Franklin and East 2nd be approved for the following reasons. The request would not appear to have a negative impact on the surrounding area. The request would not appear to have a negative impact upon pedestrian or traffic conditions with the area. The new development brings shopping opportunities to an area that does currently have a full line grocery store and could be considered a food desert. It would further the efforts to revitalize the Walnut District, and if following conditions that the final site plan meets all applicable city codes, regulations, etc., including but not limited to parking, landscaping, screening, drainage, etc.
Are there any questions for staff?
I don't know if this is a question for staff, but it's a statement. You know, in our in the documents that we got this afternoon, we got just handed out now, there's a couple points of opposition from people who don't want the House of Hope, the 222 Walnut Street location torn down as part of developing the grocery store. If they're moving, their residents are moving with them, right? So basically, you're just tearing down a building. What's so special about a building that's not going to be being used because the residents and who's there now is moving to another better location? I don't know what's so special about tearing down or not tearing down the building.
This is Paul, sorry, I'm going to jump in on this one. Yeah, I would say, Eric, that one of, just because a building is currently occupied in a certain way, doesn't mean that it won't have future use.
Okay.
And so when we take that building and demolish it, we ultimately, that building can't have another use. It has served, 95 years in that neighborhood. And so I know that there's some other options that were presented. I'm not sure where the applicant is at on those options, but it would seem to me that a building that's been there for 95 years, certainly for a while, most recently it's been House of Hope, but it's had other functions.
Yeah.
That building can certainly still serve the neighborhood. And again, I'll defer to some other folks, but it seems like it certainly is inhabited now, from my understanding. It's a decent building, and historic preservation is definitely going to recommend keeping that, I'm sure.
Okay. I didn't realize that it was under historical preservation. I didn't realize it was 95 years old. So.
And this is Butchin, and I have been in that home many times, and I know of people who have spent time there and the benefits of it, and I understand they're moving somewhere else, but it's a beautiful building, and since we are working to, the Walnut neighborhood is on the rise, we've okayed for more houses to be restored. I think this would be sad to not say that this should be saved.
Okay.
Who owns this building?
You know,
currently, does the House of Hope?
I thought House of
I
Hope.
think it
They
does.
may be counting on the sale of that property to renovate their new facility.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if they are or not.
I know they have a fundraiser in the process right now because I'm part of that, but as
This
far
is
as this, I
Flynn,
don't.
though, and I do applaud efforts to keep historical value, but I think as a community, we have to be cognizant that, yes, we want it to be restored, but who's going to do that and who's going to put the dollars into it? Because we don't want to have a dilapidated house with a brand new and a revitalized neighborhood. We don't want that sitting there and nobody doing anything with it too. So I know it's all good efforts that we want to restore the building, but I think we have to have determination if we do keep the building, who is responsible for restoring and upkeeping of the building.
And I'm sorry, this is doing that again. I'm going to advocate however we build the store, whether we tear down the building or not. I mean, I didn't want to get stuck on the House of Hope building, but I was advocating for the store because I live in the neighborhood too, and having a regular grocery store or a traditional grocery store would actually benefit me. It would benefit me personally in terms of like being able to go down in my wheelchair and go to the grocery store and pick up groceries locally instead of having them delivered and whatever.
Right.
So having the grocery store there and be built and be a business in the neighborhood would personally benefit me. Yeah. So, I mean, that's my opinion. So I support building the store, and also I support, you know, considering not tearing down the building of the household.
Well, and I think that's...
Maybe we need to know whether they're selling it to someone else.
I don't think that's necessarily an issue that we need to take care, or that we can. I think that's out of our purview, because we're talking about rezoning, we're talking about a site plan amendment.
Yeah.
And I don't think what the folks are going to do with the property, you know, if they get it, I don't know that that's something that Planning and Zoning Commission can say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's something that we need to be concerned with.
Yeah.
I understand people that want to keep that building, and that's fine, but that's something else altogether.
Yeah, this is Tyson, and I understand what Tavis was saying and everyone else, but...
And I do too.
And again, but I'm looking at... I see a lot of people in that neighborhood, and a lot of folks are on foot, okay? Yeah. And I see them walking across the river to get a carton of milk, you know, and farther than what other store is there outside of Hy-Vee up the way, and I just think that anything we can do, the city, planning, zoning, community development, mayor, to increase the services of like a grocery store to our citizens, it's going to be nothing but a godsend. You know, and maybe I'm wrong, but again, I'm concerned about the historical thing, but again, I got to look at the people who are in that neighborhood and the potential, and yeah, you're right, Eric, you certainly would benefit.
Yeah.
And need to, yeah, for sure. So that's just my reflections.
Because,
and if I can just jump in real quick, just to point out that there was, I don't know if it actually ended up getting forwarded to the commissioners or not, but I know that I've seen architectural renderings that allow for the building of that grocery store and keeping the building. Right, so it's not an either or.
It was
and the building isn't something that's sort of falling down. This isn't in danger of getting 657A. Well, this isn't something that's on the chopping block. It has to be on the chopping block.
Right.
It's a existing structure that's currently being occupied that this project, and again, we'll have to have the applicant come and speak, but there's a potential here for there to be some compromise within the neighborhood, so that the structure can be preserved.
Yep.
And this grocery store can be built.
I think, can the applicant address this or not? Thank you.
You bet. Dan Levi Architecture, Nashua, Iowa. I can address the comment made about a rendering that was quietly handed out to certain commission members. First, I'll question the motivation of that piece of paper and that information. That happens to be another someone who works at another office that is a competitor of mine. So there's some issue. I think there's some conflict of interest there. Second, there's very little background to that information. It's a loose depiction, an artistic rendering of a site plan that does not appear to adhere to the proper setbacks. It has poor circulation for pedestrian versus vehicular, and it's too close to the House of Hope, so you can't actually build it of that nature. It also fronts the building on the corner, which is does not take into account the vision triangle issues on either Second Street or the private drive. So while it's certainly a very pretty picture and it poses a rosy view of what could be, there are multiple ordinance issues that are inaccurate in its depiction of its possibilities. We have explored the possibility of not asking the city as part of a developmental agreement to include the two corner properties, and based on the feasibility studies that we have used with our national consultant for this project, there is a sweet spot that our store needs to hit in terms of square footage for a certain amount of product sales in order for this project to be viable. Too small, it's not going to go well. Too large, it's not going to be able to compete with some of the larger grocery store chains that we have in our area. So there's a very limited window that our national consultant has targeted us to have this happen. If we want to keep our semi-truck traffic as far out of the view of traffic, as well as keep it as far away as we can reasonably from our residential areas, the building as it lays out is not happenstance. It's taken months and months to come up with this, and it's been massaged over time. So while I appreciate someone making a suggestion to present it as a better alternative, unless they've been working on that and have the background information that we have as the developer for the last few months, then I'd appreciate it if that actually hadn't ended up in your hands in such a back channel way.
Thank you. Who did this come from?
Yeah. Go ahead.
The person writing
It was
the email?
emailed to us. I cannot say the name.
Ivan?
Yes.
Ivan Volchev?
And who is Ivan?
Eric Schrader, city planner. Yes, we received this via Ivan Volchev, who is a architect as well as the applicant's.
The website is not listed as no.
Okay, well, okay. He, I believe, works for an architectural firm. Okay, he works for an architectural firm that, as the applicant's representative noticed, is a competitive to the applicant's business. He is also an individual that is active in the Main Street organization and has been active in historic preservation activities in the past.
If I could add to that.
And I would also add that he lives in the Walnut.
Exactly.
Right.
That's on the information we got.
But my question, this is Flynn again, wouldn't the applicant have hired their own architect?
They did.
That's what Dan was.
And that's, right, that's what I'm saying. So why are we accepting this if the applicant didn't give us this?
This is Schrader with staff. He's an interested party. He's, I mean, just as much as any other citizen, whether they are an architect or work for an architect or not, if they want to submit an email and some sort of site plan or sketch or something like that on how they feel a layout would work better, they're always entitled to do that. It's not part of the applicant's submittal. It is something that an interested party has submitted to suggest their thoughts on an alternative layout.
Thank you.
This is Castle. I guess I just want to go back, and I'm trying to figure out if we have the ability to say anything about, well, we have to keep the House of Hope building.
I don't think
if that
we
is even something that we should be discussing as part of this review, or if it's something that we need to take off the table because it's not our responsibility.
Yeah, I think we said that earlier.
My personal thought is, and this is Holdeman, that that's not something that's within our power.
Right, but bringing this up again, it does it, so.
I guess this is Anderson with staff. I mean, obviously, you know, to approve the site plan that they have there, you can obviously see that would involve acquiring the parking lot from Mr. Dave Larson and acquiring the House of Hope building and building over those areas. So both of those would be demolished. So, you know, that's just something you can take into consideration as if you approve this site plan, that would give them the zoning authority to move ahead with that plan. Obviously, if the site plan's approved and for some reason those two properties are not acquired, they'd have to come back to us with a different site plan at some point. So it's a separate issue. At the same time, it's part of the site plan approval you're looking at right now.
So they have not been acquired yet?
They have not been finalized, correct.
Okay.
Mr. Deeds is patiently waiting.
David Deeds, 922 Mulberry Street, so just down the street here. I'm here as part of the Walnut Neighborhood Coalition, which is our housing coalition. Allie Parrish is here as well from that group. And for JSA Development as part of that coalition. Just a couple of quick things. Before I say anything else, I think there is not anyone here that is opposed to a well-run, successful grocery store being at that site. Okay? I just want to be very clear about that. That it's not about it being a grocery store. It's not about any of those things. So I would suggest a couple of things just to clarify. I think Mr. Anderson's comments regarding the fact that you do have, I would suggest as a citizen that you do have some influence in this because you're being asked to rezone that parcel, those two parcels to CP. So that is in your purview and what you're being asked to do today. I'm not advocating that you don't rezone it. That's not why I'm here, but I think it's worth pointing out. I would also like to point out something else for future reference, that I would suggest that, in fact, as a planned development, you as a commission have a great deal of flexibility regarding setbacks, regarding parking, regarding a lot of those things. You don't necessarily have to take what is handed to you. I'm not advocating for you to change that either, but I think that's good for future reference, right? What I am here today to advocate for, however, is a result of our meeting that we did have between the coalition and the developers, asking you to memorialize some of those things that we believe as a group we agreed on at yesterday's meeting. One of which is a commitment to not vacate Clay Street. Now, I know Mr. Johnson indicated that's being pulled, but I think we would like to see some sort of longer-term commitment that it won't suddenly reappear at some future date. We'd also like to see memorialized is some more specific landscaping requirements. It's pretty, the site plan is shown, I realize it's an early site plan, but you're being asked to approve it. So what trees are planned? Where are they planned? What are the planting areas? You're being asked to approve an incomplete plan at this point. I'm not asking you to not approve it. I'm asking you to apply a condition of your approval that a complete landscaping plan in consultation with the neighborhood and the Walnut Coalition be developed for your ultimate review and approval. We would also like to see, and I think it's not shown on the site plan, and I hope it's a dead issue at this point. Early versions of the site plan showed a in-neighborhood parking lot, and an auxiliary parking lot. We'd like to see a commitment from the developer not to pursue that in the future because we think it is detrimental to the redevelopment of the Walnut neighborhood, particularly in the core, the residential non-commercial areas. So we'd like to see some of that memorialized. I think we're in agreement on them based on our meeting yesterday. We'd just like to see something on paper to that effect. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
If I can say a comment, sure. Allie Parrish, 856 Sunrise Boulevard, also the Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity and a member of the Coalition. So just real quick, just to kind of add to what Dave said too. First of all, I just want to say a thank you to the team that we met with yesterday. We had a great meeting. And I appreciate the efforts that they made to come back and listen to some of the comments and the feedback. So we're very appreciative of that. We're very much in support of the grocery store, as Dave said. And I think mostly what I would like to talk about is just some current concerns that I've had being a part of the neighborhood coalition since it's formed as around process. And so I feel like perhaps there's some inconsistencies with how some developers are asked to do projects and engage neighborhood residents at different stages than other developments. And I think that that's a little bit detrimental to these things happening in timely fashion with as little headache as possible. And just one personal example of that, when we at Habitat were wanting to develop the Irving Square location, the old Irving Elementary School site, we were told very specifically by the mayor at the time, who was Mayor Clark, and others, that we had to follow a very specific process, and that we were not even allowed to bring an application to you all for a site plan amendment or rezoning or anything like that until we had visited with the neighborhood in several meetings and gotten approval from the neighborhood, gone back and forth, and had all of our meetings prior to an application even being submitted. And me being new at the process at that time, you know, I'm like, I'll do whatever you tell me to do because I want to do this right. And I want to have this process be successful. And I feel like coming in with a little bit of humility and a little lack of maybe understanding and history with all of this, I felt like we came to a really good solution in the long run and a lot less headache and throughout the process, because we did that. We met with the residents. We had meetings where they screamed at us for an hour and a half. Eric was at some of those. And we listened, and we went back with some revisions, and we had another meeting. And then we listened, and we came back again for a third meeting. And all of that was done prior to you guys seeing one document from us. So to know that something went out on July 20th to the people that live somewhat close to this neighborhood, the 250 feet or whatever maybe it was, that's not very much time. And we had to kind of force our way into having a conversation, we feel like, and I'm not blaming these guys because that's just the way, you know, business is operated, but I feel like it's unfair for the city to require one way for one kind of development and not require the same for another. And I feel like if that same requirement would have been had from the very beginning, we could have dealt with some of this a little bit ahead of all this that you guys are seeing, and maybe could have had a little bit of a smoother process all along when we weren't really brought in until later on. And I do feel like you guys have influence and power over that. You certainly did when it was Habitat involved, and we listened to that, you know, so and we felt like that was the best way to do business, that we want to go in collaborating and listening and being a team member, and I feel like these individuals do as well, but they weren't held to the same standard that we were. And so that's a little frustrating, I'm just going to say. And I hope that as we move forward, working in tandem and coalition and true partnership, that we can adjust that and that we can have city representatives encouraging that kind of a process much earlier on, prior to you all even receiving any kind of information or any dates being set, any applications received, so that we can have a better process from start to finish.
Well, and this is Flynn, but I guess I would suggest to you, you should bring that to a city council meeting.
I will.
And that exact comments, because we're a planning and zoning commission. We are given what's brought before us. We have nothing to do with the process.
Right.
So we can't help you at all with that.
Can you encourage it at all? With staff?
Not really. I have no voice in the process. I'm sent a packet on what we're going to discuss.
Can you always make sure when you receive information that that process has happened prior to, or is that not in your power?
I would say that's not in my power because I'm not an employee of the city of Waterloo. I'm a volunteer, and I am looking and sitting in this capacity based on the information provided to me by paid city staff. So,
well, I just thought it was an important point that should be made. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And I agree with Sue Flynn's comments.
Rodney Anderson, Central Property Holdings. I'm the developer, and you guys cheated me out of my spot. There's a restaurant that goes with this grocery store. I just wanted to make that clear. And also, I'm from Waterloo, and I think I've met with Allie, I've met with Dave. I'm thinking we've met all together 3 times, you know. So I guess the way the city do meetings and everything else, we had no concern with that. We want to meet with them face to face. I know that everyone wants the best for the neighborhood. We are definitely putting our money where our mouth is, definitely. So with that being said, I'm not going to hold up any more of your time because it's been a long day for everybody. So I'm going to cut it off there and give it back to one of the guys back here. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for the applicant. Can you redesign your the grocery store to accommodate keeping the House of Hope building, or whatever it's called when it's not the House of Hope, that building that others don't want to tear down?
House of Hope.
Yeah. So can you accommodate for keeping that 95-year-old building?
This project has been going on for 14 months. This wasn't an overnight thing. It's been going on for 14 months because you have studies to do. You have feasibility studies. You need to know how big, like Mr. Levi was saying, you have to know how big this place has to be profitable. We took all of that in consideration. And when we came up with the plans, we had to have a store that size because our main thing was creating jobs. That was the biggest thing, 60 to 80 jobs. That was a lot for this community. So what we see is, like I told Mr. Dees, hopefully we can partnership and have commercial and residential work together for the betterment, not just Walnut Court. And that's another thing we wanted to emphasize. Walnut Court, great neighborhood. I grew up in City View, great neighborhood. It's for all of Waterloo. And for those things to happen, we should work together. Have to? No. Should? Yes. You know, and I say have to, no, because sometimes people don't want to work with each other. They find it a competition for us. Like I talked to David, and he knows we're no one's in competition with no one. Our biggest competition is ourselves. So at this point, I just want to make that clear. Like, we wasn't holding anything back from Allie and her group in Walnut Court or Highland Park. We're just basically going what we know to do, and that's to meet with people, because I'm a face-to-face person. Text message, email, that's great, but face-to-face, it says a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to come forward and address on this issue?
Hi, my name's Dave Larson. I'm the owner of Walnut Court Apartments and owner of, you don't have it up, but the parking lot that's on the corner. That's I've talked to Noel about, and I think, first of all, I can't speak for all 90 of my tenants at Walnut Court, but we are in favor of a grocery store, and that would be great in the community. And everything that's been said before, yeah, I agree with. But I just want you to keep in mind that one of the issues that we've had since I've had Walnut Court is parking. And so I cannot let that parking lot go without an adequate solution to off-street parking. And Noel has been working with me, and we've been looking at a couple of ideas, and nothing has, we haven't finalized anything yet or gotten close to something that's going to work. But before I could sell that property, I need to have something for my tenants for off-street parking. And right now, I think that parking lot has 28 spots, and it's not adequate the way it is right now. So I hate to let that go. So that's all.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
If we rezone this, that won't affect your use of that lot as a parking lot if Mr. Anderson doesn't acquire it for anyone?
I don't think so, because they have a parking lot for the grocery store.
Okay.
So it would be used as parking. What I do have a concern for is the item with vacating the alleyway. If we do not sell the parking lot, that alleyway is an access in and out of that parking lot. And so that's a concern.
Your only access?
No, we have two accesses. Okay. It's a narrow parking lot, and it was squeezed in. And so we really need both ends to get in and out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, can I make a comment?
Sure.
This is Tyson, and again, I can't put myself in the shoes of many of the citizens who live over there and park in front of their houses, if they do. But when I go out of town, the big cities and stuff, yes, if I drive a car, I want to keep it close to the hotel. I'd rather pay the $40 a night that they might charge me versus going a block away and paying $15 because I'm concerned about crime or whatever else. And I want to make sure that wherever my car is at, it's going to be protected as much as it can be. I don't know if cameras, that type of thing. And then, two, looking at senior citizens and the availability they can walk and get to the parking lot without being bothered, that type of thing. And again, maybe it's kind of negative, but I just want to make sure that we look out for them and have their best interests.
Absolutely. It's a distance from any parking lot or even parking on the street to the center of the building where their elevator is and all the way up. And if you just think about carrying a bag of groceries, that's a long ways for seniors to carry groceries. So, but yep, parking is a concern, and that's something we need to figure out.
Okay.
Anyone else that would like to make a presentation to us? Okay, seeing no one, we'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Movements.
Do not and then Flanagan.
Moved and seconded to close the hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. Now we'll go on to discussion about the requests and motions as need be amongst commissioners.
This is Castle. I'm just clarifying that we're doing the rezoning and site plan amendments and not items C and D, correct?
Correct, for B1 and B2 at this point.
I guess I'll make a motion if there's no discussion. This is Castle, and I move that we approve the request by Central Holdings LLC to rezone approximately .39 acres from R3 multiple resident districts to CP's planned commercial district for the purpose of constructing a new grocery store located southeast of 205 Franklin Street near the intersection of Franklin Street and East 2nd Street.
Second. Or were you done with that motion?
Well, I was going to do the second part too, unless we want to do it separate, so.
Well, I think we can
And
put it
then,
together.
yep, and then also approve the request by Central Holdings LLC for a site plan amendment to the CP planned commercial district for the purpose of constructing a new 26,077 square foot grocery store located near the intersection of Franklin Street and East 2nd Street.
Second on both of those. Can I do both of those motions?
Yeah.
Okay,
Sure.
I'm going to be the second on both of those motions as presented.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, if there's no further discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
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 The chair votes aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you. We're moving on to the vacation, and it's already been stated that the request for vacating Clay Street has been pulled from the agenda. So we'll have a request. We don't have to have a public hearing on these, do we? No. Okay, it's a request by Central Holdings Incorporated to vacate a 20-foot wide platted public alley in Cooley Edition just off of East 2nd Street, northeast of Franklin Street, for the purposes of constructing a grocery store.
Yeah, the applicant, this is Heiberger with staff. The applicant is requesting to vacate a portion of an alley in Block 64 adjacent to lots 17 and 18 of the Cooley Edition and located adjacent to 222 Walnut Street. The request to vacate the alley would not have a negative impact on the surrounding neighborhood, as the alley only extends 120 feet into Block 64. The remainder of the alley was already vacated in 1986, and if it could be extended, would dent it at the CVS parking lot at 205 Franklin Street. The alley currently serves as access to a women's shelter and parking lot for an apartment complex across the street. However, both properties are proposed to be purchased by the applicant to be incorporated into the proposed grocery store development. The request to vacate a portion of an alley in Block 64 adjacent to Lot 17 and 18 of the Cool Edition would not appear to be negative effect of traffic conditions. The alley also extends 120 feet into the block, and if it could be extended, would dead end at CVS. Central Property Holdings LLC, as part of a grocery store development project, is submitting applications for a rezone request appeal to permit parking in the city right away and a site plan amendment request. Therefore, staff recommends the request to vacate a portion of an alley in Block 64 of the Cooley Edition and comprising of approximately 2,400 square feet be approved for the following reasons. The request to vacate would not appear to have a negative impact on the surrounding area and would help promote infill development. The request to vacate would not appear to have a negative impact on vehicular or pedestrian traffic in the area, and the request to vacate will accommodate the redevelopment of the site and create infill development in the primary growth area of the city.
Any questions for staff?
I have a concern when they're talking about this right-of-way parking, this extra 23
That's a separate
spot.
item coming up later.
Oh, I'm sorry. Appreciate it.
This is just for the vacation of the alley.
Okay.
Mr. Anderson with staff, so just as a note, Mr. Larson noted that he had concerns with this being vacated, so we could add a ingress-egress easement to this vacate in case the parking lot was not included in the development. If it was, then obviously there'd be no purpose for the easement, but if it wasn't that way, he's still safeguarded as he requested. So if you want to add that as a condition, when we make a motion, that would take care of that concern without really, in my opinion, it negatively impacting the development.
Okay. Would that be acceptable to the developer?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. If there's no discussion, or I'm sorry, no questions for staff.
No, I'm trying to figure out what we're voting. This is do not. trying to figure out what motion we're voting for because of the amendment offered by Anderson.
We don't have a motion on the floor.
Okay.
We're just talking about the vacating the alley, and Mr. Anderson suggested that if we do that we should perhaps put something in there that in case the developer doesn't acquire the parking lot, that they maintain an easement for egress for that parking lot.
Yeah, and yeah. I understand.
Okay. Yeah, it's getting confusing. It's getting late in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm freezing to death. I'm sorry. We got to turn down the air in here.
Okay, if there are no questions for staff, thank you. And if there's anybody, if the developer or anyone else in the room would like to come forward and make any comments regarding this issue, we'd appreciate it right now. Okay, seeing none, well, if there's no further discussion amongst commissioners, we'll entertain a motion.
This is Tyson. I'd like to make a motion that the board accept the staff recommendation on the request to vacate a portion of the alley in Block 64 of the Cooley Addition and comprising approximately 2,400 square feet be approved for the following reasons. The request to vacate would not appear to have a negative impact on the surrounding area and would help prompt infill development. Secondly, the request to vacate would not appear to have a negative impact on vehicular or pedestrian traffic in the area. And third, the request to vacate will accommodate the redevelopment of the site and create an infill development in the primary growth area.
Would you also like to add a maintaining an easement for ingress and egress in case the parking lot doesn't get acquired?
Yes, I would. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, been moved and seconded. If there's no further discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, that's carried. Moving on to the request by Central Holdings LLC for the restrictions for parking in city right-of-way to allow for 23 parking spaces. I'm sorry, this is for an appeal of the restrictions for parking in city right-of-way to allow for 23 parking spaces within the public right-of-way of East 2nd Street for the purposes of parking lot for new grocery store. Staff report.
Okay, yeah, this is Heiberger with staff. The applicant is requesting to allow for parking in the city right-of-way located between the street and property line along 2nd Street between Franklin and Walnut Streets. It would appear that the request would not have a negative impact on the area. However, other existing businesses along other streets in the area do not appear to utilize parking in the city right-of-way. The proposed request could have an impact on traffic in the area. Allowing parking in the right-of-way would appear to create a situation where cars are forced to back out into the road. The street in question would appear to be a low-traffic street, but traffic should be expected to increase with the addition of a new grocery store. There are interconnecting sidewalks, but there are no recreational trails in the immediate vicinity. Proposed trail, however, is planned as a part of the U.S. Highway 63 reconstruction project and will be located 1 block west of the west side of Highway 63. The applicant is requesting an appeal to the city code requirement prohibiting vehicles from parking on the city-owned right-of-way located between the street and property line along 2nd Street between Franklin Street and Walnut Street to allow for the parking of 23 spaces associated with the proposed development of a grocery store. City Ordinance 4602 notes that parking is not permitted in the city right-of-way between the curb and sidewalk. The code goes on to say that businesses wishing to park in the city right-of-way must obtain a permit from the City Council. Previously, similar requests were treated as an appeal to the driveway width appeals in the past and first gone to Planning and Zoning Commission before being heard by the City Council. Staff would note that there is a potential negative impact to traffic conditions in the area, as allowing parking in the city right-of-way would cause vehicles to back out onto a public road, creating a situation where visibility is reduced and cars would temporarily block the street. The City of Waterloo Engineering Department noted safety concerns regarding this request. Staff would note that this section of East 2nd Street between Franklin Street and Walnut Street is a low-traffic street, but this could change with the addition of a new grocery store. Most through traffic would appear to use Highway 63, Franklin Street, Walnut Street, or 3rd Street to gain access. Staff would also note that allowing parking in the right-of-way on low-traffic street in this area would appear to be a benefit to the development of some of the smaller infill lots in this area. Allowing parking in the city right-of-way in certain situations could be a tool to encourage greater infill development in this area. The applicant is proposing to build a 27 square foot grocery store with the 1,110 parking stalls in the parking lot, in addition to the 23 additional parking stalls on East 2nd Street. That is part of the request to appeal to the city code requirement prohibiting vehicles from parking on the city-owned right-of-way. Zoning ordinance requires that a grocery store and other retail stores that are between 5,000 and 50,000 square feet provide one parking space for every 250 feet of floor area, which works out to 104 parking stalls. According to drawings provided, the applicant intends to provide 133 parking stalls, 29 of more than is required through the 23 of these that will be on East 2nd Street. The Waterloo Engineering Department was concerned about having vehicles back out onto the public road and how this could impact driver safety. One potential suggestion was to have the parking spaces be at least at a 45-degree angle to improve driver safety. There's no plating required as a part of this request. Therefore, staff recommends that the appeal to the city code requirement prohibiting vehicles from parking on the city-owned right-of-way located between the street and the property line and along 2nd Street between Franklin Street and Walnut Street be approved for the following reasons. The street in question is a low-traffic street with other businesses utilizing the right-of-way for parking vehicles. Allowing this parking would appear to encourage infill development of a small size lot that would be difficult to develop due to meeting normal parking standards. And subject to the following condition, the parking area would need to be graded, drained, and hard surface per section 1025-2D of the zoning ordinance and meet specifications of the city engineer. And number 2, the parking area will not block the sidewalk or street system in the area.
Are there any questions for staff?
This is Castle. I'm not sure if this is for staff or for the applicant, but I'm just curious why they're asking for this change when it appears that they would have enough parking spots in their lot.
That was my question as well.
Applicant, okay.
Dan Levi, developer. There's a difference between ordinance minimum and a practical use.
Okay.
We feel that we're going to need more parking stalls specifically because of the restaurant, which is on that corner, planned for that corner of it of the development. So we anticipate the need for a lot of traffic. We also anticipate, at least towards the Walnut Street side, most of those parking stalls will actually be used by Mr. Larson's residents anyway. We're basically replacing some close parking stalls back into the residential area.
Okay, you're talking, and Mr. Anderson mentioned a restaurant as well. Is that going to be in the building?
Yes.
It's not going to be a standalone? It's going to be part of
Restaurant will be inside of the development, or inside of the building itself, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions for staff? Thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody in the room here want to make a comment either for or against this item? Okay, seeing no one.
Can I? Yeah, okay. I'd like to ask something too. Again, maybe I should have. Security. Can someone tell me what that's going to look like at the grocery store and the restaurant? Are there going to be cameras outside, guards, whatever? You know, what's it going to look like? Is it going to be safe for those coming in? And I just say that because I'm just concerned in the area.
Yes. Okay. We will have we're going to have the cameras, we'll have security, and plus our hours. You know, with the hours that we're going to have, we're not going to have midnight hours or 24 hours. The store will probably run just you know, thinking without football concussions kicking in, from 7 o'clock that morning to maybe 10 o'clock that night. So we'll also have, you know, someone on staff, you know, basically in shifts.
All right. How about one other thing?
This is Hall.
Oh, go ahead, Dave.
This is Hall. I've heard that concern about security a couple times. I just got to say this. If downtown Waterloo, and then recognize this, my position, I got to say this. If downtown Waterloo were its own city, 5,500 during the day, 2,100 at night, $70 million in commerce, that's a pretty good sized community. If you take our crime rate in downtown Waterloo and compare that to other communities in Iowa, downtown Waterloo would be safer than Guttenberg, Iowa. Downtown Waterloo would be safer than Decatur, Iowa. Certainly closer or safer than some of the neighboring communities outside of Waterloo. So I recognize there's always a conception, but it is absolutely a misconception. There is, like I said, statistically, there would be no reason for any heightened security in any of these locations.
I agree with you, Mr. Hall. There will not be a situation that's going to look like a prison guard, because we've been to some places. And I can take you some places that maybe you would think you would need that, but no, it won't look like that.
Okay. I have to agree with Commissioner Hall. I've lived in downtown Waterloo. I live in the neighborhood that's being discussed. And I've been out at night. I've been out during the day. I've been out at 12 and 2 and whatever because of events. And I've never had a problem with muggings. I've never had a problem with robbery. I've never had a problem with anything that would be considered negative within that neighborhood. So, you know, I feel safe in that neighborhood. That's my neighborhood, and I've never had any problem.
You are correct, Eric, and that's the stigma that we're going to get rid of. Anytime that we sit in this meeting like this, and you gentlemen and ladies may think, okay, what about security? What do you think other people that don't stay in Waterloo feel? We go to a lot of places, and a lot of people say the same thing. You guys don't have any problems. Look at our city. I could take you to a place that I just left last week called Englewood, Illinois. If you would stop there, you would run back to Waterloo and the first thing smoking. And also, Eric, you won't have any problems because you're going to come to the steakhouse over here and get a steak with me. Okay, I'll hold you to that.
Is Eric buying? If he is, we'll all be there.
We can move the next meeting.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Okay, are there any?
I have one more question. I'm just curious if the developer has taken into account the 45-degree angle parking instead of the head-in parking.
Because I would agree with that too.
We have the implication of a 45-degree angle parking, assuming you're angling in or heading that towards Franklin, or towards Franklin. That means you're going to encourage traffic up 3rd, around Walnut, and then back down 2nd. We are doing what we can to keep our commercial traffic out of the residential neighborhood. So we would really not like to see that.
You would not be supporting the 45-degree angle?
Absolutely not.
Marcia, did your question get answered?
I guess just the safety issue of whether it's 45-degree or backing straight out. I have a concern about safety there, and definitely we need parking spaces for, I know you're not going to have all 104 parking spots full at the same time. You're going to have walk-in traffic. You're going to have that's not what I meant. The eating establishment. Sorry, I need to eat myself. I know some of those places will be handled by both. So I guess I worry about the feeling that you do need that extra space. I guess maybe that's just me, and maybe I'm being negative Nelly, but there's going to be a lot of walk-in traffic for groceries too.
Sure. I'm going to be part of that walk-in traffic.
Exactly.
Mr. Thorson is.
Eric Thorson, Sr. I just want to make it clear the 45-degree angle was not a suggestion of the engineering department. That came from somewhere else. We were just concerned about the safety. It is a low-volume street today. It probably won't be if the store is successful, and if it's very busy and a lot of volume, that's great because then it means the store is successful. So we're just concerned about safety.
Right. I mean, I want the business to succeed, and I want the 60 jobs or whatever it's going to entail. I just, I think there's a sidewalk across the street from that, if I'm not mistaken, also. So it's just a safety concern of mine.
Any other comments, questions, discussion? If there is none, then we'll entertain a motion.
I'm sorry. This is Hall, and I apologize for the nature of being on the phone. I remember when Mr. Deeds spoke previously, he talked about some agreements regarding what looked like some of the right-of-way parking. Is that included in this, or and maybe Mr. Anderson can speak to this well? Was that agreement regarding this item, or was that another point?
Again, this is Dan Levi. The agreement, the parking concern that was brought up by Mr. Deeds was it was an earlier site plan. I'm not sure how that was acquired. That was not actually sent to the city. We may have provided that to him directly. But at one point, we were entertaining employee parking on the block to the north, what I call the north. It depends on how long you've lived in Waterloo or know the area. I call it north, across from the retention pond. But we took that off the table for a convenience and cost issue anyway. So that was a separate issue we were discussing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that was up at Almond and Clay.
Correct.
Yeah. And I'll just throw out here to the commission, I'd be a little fearful of how that starts to make this neighborhood look if we've got folks parking in the right of way. It's not a good look in any other neighborhood. We do have a couple of neighborhoods that, particularly on the west side, where we've had this come up sort of the west side of the south side downtown, between like 8th and 6th Street in particular. It doesn't necessarily give us the most finished look. I'd agree that if we're looking at additional traffic onto West 2nd because of the success of the store, this would sort of seem to be West 2nd and Clay and sort of the entire neighborhood. This just sort of seems like an odd request.
Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I have to ask another question. If we were to approve it at this point and find that it is a nuisance or a safety issue, is there any way that it can be reversed, or is once a decision's made, a decision's made?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure I have an answer to that. Eric, do you know?
That is a good question, but I think the developer's going to have a lot of expense in putting this in because they'll have to meet standards. Right. So once it's there, there's a lot of expense to that. So you really probably need to decide one way or the other just for their benefit. I don't think you should make them or say it's okay and then later take it away after they've made the expense to make the improvements. So at least that's my opinion.
By the same token then, Eric, is it something that if we did not approve it and they got the project going and decided that they did need the parking after all, could they come back and petition the city?
No, I'm sure they could do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Dave Larson again. Just wanted to share that I think with Walnut Court and the visual how it would look parking off the street, I think it would be all right. Right now, cars are lined bumper to bumper every day, about a block and a half around there if you drive around. And so you can't really see the parking area. And it would actually be safer, whether you're parking straight in or angled parking, it would be safer than the way it is right now, where there's parking on both sides of 2nd Street, and it's really tight when cars are coming off of Walnut Street. And I think it's actually okay parking straight in. I would call it the west side of East 2nd, because the fast traffic is coming off Franklin Street, and they'll be actually in the other lane. And when you're coming off of Walnut Street, coming down East 2nd, you're going a little bit slower. That's what I've noticed in the neighborhood. So I think it would be a good thing.
Yeah, his comments about current parking in the neighborhood, in that neighborhood that you're referring to, that's actually true. I mean,
it's very congested.
Yeah.
And I know the grocery store, I mean, putting up a grocery store and the infrastructure and the cost behind it, they're really putting themselves out there, because it's a thin margin game, and going into the neighborhood, I really appreciate it. So anything to help make that work, I'm all in favor of.
I would think it'd be even more congested if you have cars backing out from the parking area than just parallel parked along the street.
I think it could be scarier.
A safety
with,
issue.
Yeah. The 45 to me makes, if we're going to say yes, that makes much more sense. But I'm still not.
I'm not in
in favor.
Okay, any further discussion? Not, we'll entertain a motion.
Do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We have 6.
Forgot about Hall.
Yeah. Davis is here. Well, 5 is actually a quorum. He's here. Davis just looks a little different today.
Okay.
I guess I will make the motion. This is Castle, and I move that we approve the request by Central Holdings LLC for an appeal of the restrictions of parking in the city right-of-way to allow for 23 parking spaces within the public street right-of-way of East 2nd Street for the purpose of parking for a new grocery store.
We have a motion to approve the request for an appeal of the restriction of parking in the city right-of-way. We have a second.
Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded. I don't know, do we want a roll call vote for this one? Or, well, let's just go with yay and nay. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no.
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 And the chair votes no. That request is denied. Thank you. Moving on, the ordinance amendments, the amendment to the zoning ordinance governing hobby farms, which was remanded by City Council, which we had our 3 o'clock work session on. Do we have a staff report?
This is Schrader with staff. We had the 3 o'clock special meeting where we had a good discussion. I don't think I need to necessarily go into anything more from a staff report. We were really kind of getting into the discussion on the changes themselves, so I think we should just open it back up for further discussion.
This is Castle. I guess what I would have said after we went through the, I guess, Morrissey's recommendations, I agree with everything that he said. I was the one that had talked about the peacocks earlier. I think that moving it to the larger intermediate would resolve my concerns with the noise with those. As for the minimum fence confined area, I do agree and understand the concern that 20,000 square feet is too much. However, I'm not sure that 5,000 is the right number either. My recommendation would be to either say 5,000 and you can have two, or say 10,000 as the minimum square footage.
Yeah, I understand that staff has the desire to say the 20,000 feet number, and I understand why Councilman Morrissey in his recommendations said the 5,000 feet number. So can we meet in the middle and say 10,000? I mean, we got to find a compromise, otherwise we'll be here again at another meeting and having other work sessions on the same issue. So we have to, as politicians say, we kind of have to get the dead cat off our door at some point. So,
and Mrs. Schrader with staff, I think Castle's suggestion of two alternatives is really intriguing, because it's kind of effectively the same from a number of animals per area that you can have, but it could be pretty effectively different. So I think that's definitely worth some further discussion on, but the thought process of either, keeping it essentially the 4 animals, but going with the 10,000 square feet, or leaving it all the way down, or moving it all the way down to 5,000 square feet, but then essentially having the number of animals that's gonna essentially open up more sites that could have, but now they can only have probably 2 at most, or two or 3. So,
and actually, I really like the idea of dropping that down to 5,000 and then 2 allowed. And if they wanted more, they could go for the special permit.
correct.
Right.
Well, actually, it's a variance. They may need a special permit depending on what they have for a petition signatures. And if you need a special permit, as part of a special permit, you can ask for a variance. It doesn't cost you anything further. If you have the petition you need and don't need a special permit, you could still independently submit a variance application to have more animals than what the ordinance would allow.
Okay, so if you went to, we'll say 10,000 square feet, and you could have 4 chickens, for each additional 2,500 square feet, would that be the requirement that you'd propose for an additional animal?
I guess I hadn't thought that far.
because,
well, and I think previously that was, they just divided the required area minimum by 4.
Right.
And then with a maximum of 8. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 1 additional, well, for the proposed.
I don't know.
It was maximum of 8, and I don't know if we had a maximum.
Well, that
Not
was
opposed to putting a maximum in there.
Right.
We just kind of figured if you've got the square footage to go with it, then
Right.
do you need a maximum?
Is there a compromise of 7,500 possibly, and with the idea that they still could have a variance if needed? Because it kind of sounds like we're in between.
Sorry.
No, that's all. It kind of sounds like we're in between, and I know we'd kind of like to get this settled.
Yeah.
And 70. How about just 75 with a maximum of 8?
I guess my question would be on, if we went to 75, is how many lots are applicable, right? So,
I know.
And that's where my rubbing point is always going to be on this. Is 5,000 is most lots. 75 is still it's a larger lot. Obviously, it's not the 20,000 dedicated square feet. But 5 seems, so if we went to 7,500, do we go for 3 chickens?
Actually, I'm not so sure that 5,000 would apply to most lots. I would think it would apply to some of the lots in the larger lot areas. but I think there's an awful lot of lots around here that only have 6,000 or 7,000 square feet.
Yeah, they're small.
And by the time you take the house, the driveway, and the garage out of there,
Right.
in the front
Exactly.
yard.
Yeah.
The more we talk, sorry, go ahead.
That's why originally the 5 made perfect sense to me as well. I'm just trying to hit a happy medium here with you.
Yeah.
But, and I'm not talking to you, Tavis, Mr. Hall. I'm talking to Jamie Castle.
Actually, I thought 10,000 was a medium, but.
Well,
and
I know in the beginning
This is Castle again, and that's why I said the 5,002, because if the concern was the property area but still allowing as many properties to kind of fit in with that, I think by saying 5,002 would be more of a compromise than saying 10,004.
What do you mean by the 2?
So we've been saying 20,000 square feet, and you could have up to 4 chickens or 4
Okay.
small animals. So what I'm
Right.
saying is 5,000, but minimize the number that you could have. So if you have 5,000 square feet, you could have 2 chickens or 2 rabbits or
2.
Really? Do you think 5 rabbits, 5 chickens is too much in a 5,000?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Well, because if you factor in the fence and everything else that you need to have in that area, I think that it could be pretty crowded. And once you have the animals, and if you're on a lot that has a 5,000, you're probably pretty close to all your neighbors if you think about it that way.
Mm-hmm. And that's where the requirement, I think, for more than just having the immediate abutting properties sign off on it is important.
Well, we talked about the across the street one.
Yeah, but still, I mean, beyond, like the second guy down may not, he's only 50 feet away, and he may not want that.
5 chickens.
And I think that 250, 60%, or maybe we change that to 50% of the 250 radial feet of the proposed. I think that makes sense, because if they don't get 100% from their neighbors, those 250 radial feet are going to be questioned anyway. So it's just seems like it's a good thing to put in there, because it allows everybody to have that opportunity to have an opinion.
Yeah.
And it doesn't say that they don't get to have, it just means then they have to go for a special permit.
Right.
Right.
So.
Okay. Right.
So we're going, you're saying that 10,000 and 2?
I was saying 5,002 or 10,004. But, and we would have to pick one or the other. Or
Well, okay. Then I would say the 5,002, and then the option of a variance if they have 3, 4
yeah.
more.
And we could do the, at 5,000 you can have 2, and then each additional 1,250 square feet you could have another for a maximum of 8.
I could buy that,
Say that
5,000.
second part again.
Okay.
Why not, if you're going to have 2 on 5,000 square feet, why not 2,500 square feet per additional?
Keeps the math even.
Yeah, that would be fine. I just was reading off of what
Yeah, right.
Morrissey was recommending. So I'll reword that. So my recommendation would be that we change it to, you can have 2 small animals for the first 5,000 square feet, and 1 additional for each additional 2,500 square feet, up to a maximum of 8 small animals.
I'll vote for that.
So you're making that as a
Oh,
motion?
I made that as a motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
Well, so are we
I can-
motioning the whole thing, or just kind of making a motion to address that part, and we'll still need another motion on the whole thing?
I can make a motion for the whole thing if that works.
Is there, okay, I
Please
agree with,
can you please
Okay.
redo that?
All right, so I'm going to do all the stuff that Morrissey brought up. So,
Okay.
Including the peacocks?
yep. So I'm moving that we, based on the recommendations from Morrissey, that we add back in peacocks, but add them to the large and intermediate animals and remove them from the small animals. I am moving that we change the requirements for density to the density of a UAHF for small sized is set at 2 animals for the first 5,000 square feet, 1 additional for each additional 2,500 square feet, with a maximum of 8 animals. And I am moving that we maintain as originally written that you have to have 100% of abutting properties approve and 60% within 250 radial feet of the approached UAHF approve or have a special permit.
And how about the across the street part?
That would be within the 250
And that's-
radial.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
And then also adding the butchering.
Well,
But I think what Marcia's referring to is that we had talked about 100% of the abutting
Oh.
property owners and the property owners across the street.
that's the way Mr. Morrissey had it written.
Okay.
So, just
So
curious.
backtracking then, and I have a question. How do you define immediately across the street?
Looking out the window and seeing the guy is across the street.
Because I've got, on my property, my house would sit in the middle of two houses.
Yeah.
So is it both those
Yeah.
properties, or is it?
On square properties, and I agree, that really probably, if we're going to include
So
that,
that's ambiguous.
needs some clarification, and it can be a difficult one to clarify, because we were looking at doing that as part of the RV parking. But what was being talked about there was basically, if you take your property in question and extend your property lines across the street, your side property lines across the street, that still can get very tricky when you're dealing with non-typical, non-square lots.
Cul-de-sac?
Yes.
And that's why I guess I was eliminating that part of it and just including them
All
in the
right.
250 requirement.
Were you sticking with a 60%?
60%.
So basically, you're eliminating that part and leaving
We're not,
that
yeah,
as
we're
it
leaving
was.
that as is, and then also adding the
No butchering.
no butchering language as
Okay.
recommended.
I understand Patrick Morrissey's proposed amendments, but when you said the original, were you talking about what Pat Morrissey presented as an amendment, and that's his original, or were you talking about the absolute original that was presented without Pat Morrissey?
I'm amending, okay, I'm gonna take Morrissey out of it.
Okay.
I'm amending the ordinance that
Proposing
we,
to approve this ordinance with additional amendments as you just stated.
yes. So what we had talked about in June, this is changes to what we had talked about in June.
Okay.
Do I need to say it again, or are we good?
Well, no, let's get a second to that, and then
Okay.
I have a question, but
Whoops, I think I just wrote them myself. I will second that, if I did, sorry.
okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? I do have a question, and it's probably for Eric, well, for you, I guess. We're not going to change the large animals, this 40,000 square feet?
I think that everyone was okay with the large animals.
Okay.
There hadn't been a discussion.
And
That's just clarification.
And a follow-up to that, maybe it doesn't matter, but now, so essentially before, as you know, the staff proposed, there was a minimum yard area for small and a minimum for large, and then so many per if you're going to go over that, with effectively no maximum if you had that. And now we're talking about putting in a maximum for the small. Just throwing it out there for further discussion, does that create any suggestion that we should likewise put a cap on the large, or they're kind of a different?
I guess I
Different
don't know
issue.
exactly where that's at in our stuff, but I thought we did have a maximum when we were talking about the sheep.
I think you're right.
I think, well, and I was going to say, even if we don't have a maximum, the amount of property that would be required would probably push them into a
Right.
whole different district to get, if they got too crazy.
We have minimum fenced
What page are you
So
on?
I'm on, well, page 15 of the one that
Of the
was like.
biggest one, or?
No, if we want to go to that, I can find it.
First one that was handed out.
Yeah, which, of the biggest one, it would be, I can get to it.
It's on page 15?
Maybe.
Is it on page 15?
It's,
There's no
that's
requirement.
flooding.
It says,
I'm close.
it's page 87, item G.
Yes. 80.
Okay, this is actually,
Well, actually, it would start on page 86. So Page 86,
Item what?
Large and intermediate.
you've got U, urban animal hobby farms, subsection 2, urban animal hobby farms shall be allowed within the city of Waterloo on lots or parcels of land as an accessory use to a principal dwelling when the following requirements are met. And then A is for the large ones. Minimum fence confined area of 40,000 square feet or more for large and intermediate sized animals such as cows, calves, sheep, goats, llamas, emus, ostrich, and similar animals, excluding swine, including potbelly pigs, camels, and exotic animals as determined in the reasonable discretion of the city planner. So that's where it provides for the large and intermediate sized hobby farms, that minimum confined area of 40,000 square feet. And then when you skip over
To G.
density of an urban animal hobby farm for large or intermediate sized animals is set as 2 animals for the first 40,000 square feet and 1 additional animal for each additional 20,000 square feet. So there's no maximum on that. There's a density, so there's a maximum based on how much area you have, but there's no maximum as long as you have enough area. And what the motion that doesn't have a second yet puts a cap of 8 that's irrespective of how much area you have.
On the small end.
And I
On
think
the small.
we did have a
So those-
second, didn't you?
I
second?
seconded
You
it.
did.
I did second
And
it.
it also takes the peacocks.
And it respects the residential
puts
people.
them large. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it moves the peacocks, it changes the density of small animals, it doesn't do anything to the large animals.
Right.
And it changes the wording adding in about the butchering.
I will say the thing about the peacocks is, and I don't know if we can do that, they're talking about, does it talk about some kind of an enclosure for larger animals like falcon, peacock? Do you know?
It says a fence.
I know, but a fence, they
That's not gonna keep
fly
them.
over. They need to have some
Well,
kind
the
of,
falcons aren't permitted anyway.
animals are not allowed, including, yeah, and that's right, and, okay, I'm sorry.
I mean, it indicates you have to have a shelter
Animals
for
not
the
allowed.
animals,
Swine,
lean-tos, tarps, carports, and similar
He wanted
structures
to, he
are
wanted to
prohibited.
include them.
Yep, so he wanted to include them, but move it to the large and intermediate, and with that 40,000 or whatever,
square
I think
That'll-
that that'll enclose it, that'll deal with sound, because they don't really fly very
It
far.
also, for large, they have.
Well,
that
my
10-foot
friend would beg
setback.
to differ.
10-foot setback and-
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. No. Motion's carried. Thank you so much. Now,
So 5-1.
5-1.
5-1.
Right.
Can I move?
I
No,
understand
we
that
need-
people that are developers have this tension.
Can I move to
No, we
adjourn the
need to.
meeting?
We
Can
have a
I
motion for
move to have
adjournment.
somebody take care of this? There's no policeman here.
In second, yeah.
Can I go
Moved
down
in
to the
second.
police station? I didn't know I could park out back. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Give it to Eric, he'll pay it. So movement seconded to
I
adjourn.
thought
We
somebody
are
mentioned
adjourned.
Okay, what
something
do you
about-
have any discussion items?
Thank you.